Well, good morning, everyone. Today is January 23rd of 2023, and a belated Happy New Year to everyone out there. The time is exactly 10:02, and I want to call the meeting of the Driver Training and Traffic Safety Advisory Committee to order. My name is Carlos Reyna, and I will be the presiding officer for this committee. Before we begin, I've been asked to review a few basic requirements from everyone participating. First, we ask that you mute your microphones and turn them on only when you speak. Also, when speaking, please announce your name so your name can be recorded. It's tedious to do it every time, but it's necessary to document who is speaking and to record the minutes of the meeting. Well, lastly, we ask that the committee members stay on camera when the meeting is in session to ensure a quorum is always present. Does anyone have any questions before we begin? No? Okay, thank you. Moving on to Agenda B, I would like to ask Delia Luna to do the roll call, and she will announce if we have a quorum.
Thank you. Mary Lloyd,
Present.
Anna Freeman is absent. Elizabeth Madden, you're muted. Oh,
Present.
thank you. David Bruce,
Present.
Rudy Martinez is absent. James Hiller,
Present.
Matthew White,
Present.
Dr. Nina Joe Saint,
Present.
and Carlos Reyna, presiding officer.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, Delia.
You're
All
welcome.
right, everyone should have received the minutes of March 15th, 2022 in the committee materials that were emailed to you prior to this meeting. Does anyone have any comments or questions on the minutes? Okay, since there are none, I'd like to ask for a motion and a second to approve the minutes as presented. Anyone?
Mary Lloyd, I motion to approve the minutes.
Thank you.
I second.
Thank you. All right. Delia, would you please do a roll call vote on approving these minutes, please?
Yes, sir. Mary Lloyd,
Approve.
David Bruce,
Approve.
Elizabeth Madden,
Approved.
James Hiller,
Approve.
Matthew White,
Approve.
Dr. Nina Joe Saint,
Approved.
and Carlos Reyna, presiding officer.
I approve.
And we have motion passes. Thank you.
Good. All right, let's move on to the next agenda item, which is public comment. Anyone wishing to address the committee usually submits an email, and they have to follow the public comment instructions provided on the TDLO website. The deadline to submit emails for this meeting was last Friday at noon. The advisory committee did receive 2 emailed public comments beforehand, and the comments will not be read out loud. We do, however, I believe, have 2 persons, Bill Blassingame and Jocelyn DeBow, that requested to speak. We thank you both for being here, but before you do, I need to give you a few instructions. First, when you speak, please state your name and who you represent. You each will have 3 minutes to speak. Please understand that also the committee members are not allowed to ask any questions or engage in a discussion with you about anything that's not specific to today's agenda. Who will be first, Delia?
Mr. Blassingame.
Mr. Blassingame, please begin when you're ready. You have 3 minutes.
Okay, I'm sorry. Ms. Reyna, were you ready for me?
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Yes, we
okay.
are, sir.
Oh, okay, part of the public comments. Okay, thank you. Okay, hey, I appreciate your time today. I'm Bill Blassingame. I'm a course provider here in Texas. Been one for about 30 years. I represent Fast, Easy Defensive Driving, along with several other courses, Easy Driver's Ed being another one. Today, I would just like to express a few concerns. I do appreciate this agency. I've worked with a lot of government agencies, and I think this is one of the finest out there. I want to give you some accolades because we have dealt with numerous staff members and they've always been very professional and very helpful. However, with all that said, we really would like to start seeing some in-person meetings for this for our driving safety and driver's ed. I know that we've had to go through these video conferencing because of the situations we were in, but I think it's very critical for our industry to come together. We're a very loose group. We all operate statewide, so when we can come together, I think it really helps. That wasn't me.
Please continue.
Apologize. Okay. So I would like to see us get back together. Gives us a chance to meet other staff members there at TDLR, and also gives other people in the industry a chance to meet one another. And that way we all are competitors, but we also have a common goal. And I believe these in-person meetings will do this. Also, with all the changes coming down from the Sunset Commission, we do appreciate the emails that we have received from TDLR, but we do have some concerns about upcoming changes that are going to occur June 1st that, that's been emailed to us, driving safety schools will be done away with, which we understand, but we're trying to prepare for this. And we don't seem like we're getting enough information to begin to prepare. So we not for sure exactly what the process is going to be. Maybe this is forthcoming, but maybe some communication saying, hey, by March, we're going to have some information for you. That way we can begin to plan for our next stage. I know some of you on this board have been around for a long time. Carlos, I know for certain you have. And this reminds me of 1995 when all these vast changes came through. And so we've kind of gone back pre-1995. But with that said, we were still going into a whole new area. So I think some communication along the course providers would be very helpful for us. I'm getting calls from other course providers. I don't have any answers. I can only direct them back to TDLR. And then you're going through customer service. And then the last thing here, we're very concerned about some.
Time's up, sir.
I'm out of time. Am
Yes,
I
sir.
out of time?
Yes, sir.
Yes, thank you, Bill. I appreciate it. All right, that takes us now to Mr. DeVoe. Are you ready? If you are, you have 3 minutes.
Mr. Bowe, are you ready?
Yes.
Go ahead, ma'am.
Oh, okay. Hi, this is Jocelyn DeBow on behalf of ACEABLE. TDLR suggested I write down some of my concerns with the rule language and provide it to you, as well as explain some of my comments on this call. I know that TDLR is in a hurry to get these rules published because there are still a lot of steps they have to go through by June 1 to get them published in time. I think that most of the things I submitted are things that you could still change after publication if you approve the rules for publication today without upsetting TDLR's timeline. And I'm hoping that Mark Gladney or one of the other TDLR attorneys can tell you if there's any that couldn't be changed without having to republish the rules. However, there's one subchapter of the rules in particular that really jumped out at me as being confusing. The way it's written, it's called driver education in subsection 84.501. It's called driver education course alternative methods of instruction. This section historically has not applied to parent-taught driver education courses, but the definition in it is broad enough now that it applies to driver education providers, which include parent-taught. When the statute was rewritten, some of those definitions were rewritten, and so there's now a broader definition, and this would apply these AMI rules to parent-taught. So, and there's a provision in the statute that specifically says that, and I think this is what we're relying on, TDLR is relying on for individuals to go back and read a particular section of the statute to understand that these rules are still not intended to apply to parent-taught courses. The Texas Education Code says that certain course and curriculum requirements that apply to online driver education courses do not apply to parent-taught driver education courses unless explicitly authorized by the statute to do so. There are certain things that are authorized by the statute, such as active participation measures, but those are not yet defined under the new rules. So I think TDLR is leaving it to the schools to interpret for themselves which of these rules would apply and not apply to parent-taught, which I think is a bit confusing if that is the intention, especially as Mr. Blassingham said. It seems like some of these rules would go into effect soon, and if that were the case, that these courses needed to include some of those, implement some of those provisions, that I'm not sure that they would have time to do so. So I think it would be helpful, perhaps before publication, if TDLR could clear up which course and curriculum requirements it thinks do and don't apply to the online parent-taught courses and other parent-taught courses. Thank you for your time this morning and for all the time you have already dedicated to revising these rules.
Thank you, Ms. DeVoe, and thank both of you again for participating with this. With that, we'll move on to item E, which are the staff reports. And I believe we will begin with the licensing division, and I'm going to call on Chloe Wayland.
Good morning, advisory board members and presiding officer Rena. I have some updates for you and some news. So I'm going to go ahead and give you the update. Our licensing division has did a reorg. And with that reorg, I have been assigned to a different position. The beautiful young lady that you see on the screen with me this morning, I am turning the baton over to her, which is Laura Hernandez. And I am going to let Laura have a few words, and then from that, I will continue on with the licensing report.
Good morning, board members. My name is Laura Hernandez. I'm one of the managers of the licensing division. I'm excited to learn the program and to participate, and with all the changes that are going on. My other programs that I handle are the towing and vehicle storage facility, the fuel metering and quality program, and about 8 others. So just hello, and I'm excited to learn.
If I may
Thank you,
interrupt, I
Laura.
have a sister named Laura Hernandez, and no, we're not related. Right? Okay.
Thank you, Laura. So for the statistics for the licensing report, we have issued 68 new licenses for the driver education instructor. We've renewed 304 licenses, and that total population is 1,858. For drug and alcohol driving awareness instructor, there have been no new licenses issued, 7 renewed, and that population is 60 for the alcohol and drug instructor. That concludes my report. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
Ms. Chloe, yes, I have a couple of questions. First off, have you seen a reduction in the number of driver education licensed instructors?
There has been a little bit compared to last fiscal year, yes.
Okay. And then secondly, I guess one of them, a call I receive a lot is from instructors who have not received the renewal form. Is there a simple process for them to be able to obtain that so they can renew their license, or do they have to go through customer service and go through that maze?
They can definitely reach out to customer service. They also can reach out to the team. And if you have a certain date that you're speaking about, that when they did not receive their renewal, we'll be glad to look into that and make sure that those renewals did go out.
Okay. Right. Thank you, Chloe. Anyone else have any questions? Chloe, did you say you had some updates? Something new?
Well, the update was introducing Laura to you, and
Oh,
I just
okay.
want to say it has been a great pleasure working with you guys and the industry.
All right. Thank you very much.
Mr. Rainier, have a comment?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, this is Nina Saint, and Chloe, we're going to miss you. You have been quite helpful, uh, helping us wade through some of this licensing issues and so forth, and do wish you the best in your new endeavors. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Nina.
I want to echo that comment because Chloe, I know you have helped me a lot. You've always been there ready to help, and you clear up my mistakes because most of the time when I've contacted you, it's our mistakes, not you all's mistakes. So I appreciate your patience with us.
You're
Thank-
very welcome.
Okay, all right. If no one else has any questions, then I guess let's move on to the next item, and that would be the Education and Examination Division. And who do we have? We have Michael Strawn, I believe. Is Michael on? Hello, Michael?
Michael, you're
Sorry.
muted.
I clicked the button and I apologize. Anyways, good morning, Chairman and members. My name is Michael Strawn. I'm one of the managers in our Education and Examination Division. Here to give you our statistics today. As you can kind of see on your screen, we have a slight increase for the number of driving safety providers and driving safety schools for fiscal year 23 already over what we saw in fiscal year 22. Parent taught courses seems about right for the first quarter compared to what we have seen last year. Our drug and alcohol driving awareness program, we did have one new DAP program come across, whereas we had none in 2022, our fiscal year 2022. And our driver education schools, we have 16 new driver education schools so far in fiscal year 2023. And then scrolling on down. So we wanted to also provide a few updates to everybody, kind of some reminders as well, some things that we've seen. We wanted to give out a reminder that renewal applications, as soon as you can get them in, up to 60 days prior to the expiration date of your license expiring, are extremely helpful. We've seen a lot of individuals or a lot of schools that may wait till the last day or two to submit renewals. They may have other obligations such as third-party skills testing. While we will meet our demands to make sure those schools are renewed on time, there is the delay on shipping a license and getting it out to school. So certainly the sooner you can get those into us, the better. We're always trying to make sure that, we're trying to serve our customers the best we can, especially over holidays and everything else. The sooner we get that, the more we're able to assist you. And I know they're going to talk about this here in a little bit later, but we just want to kind of spell it out for you. HB 1560 has brought about a whole host of changes, and you're going to hear about all of that from Mark Gladney and Angie Schmidt here in a minute. But the driving safety instructor, as of right now, the licenses that have been repealed are the driving safety instructor license, the driving safety CE course, and driver safety instructor development courses. As of June 1st of 2023, we will also be repealing the driving safety school license, the driver education instructor development courses, the driver safety course for drivers under the age of 25, specialized driving safety, DAP, driver education teacher, teaching assistant, and supervising teacher. So just be aware, June 1st, 2023, those will no longer be available for renewal. Again, we always want to tell everybody, we heard it through our public comments, we always want to keep everybody abreast of the latest updates as they're changing. We know we heard some comments about wanting to receive more information. I'm certain that's something we will take to heart. So please make sure you're visiting our website. Also sign up for our email updates. The individuals that you heard talking about receiving these updates, they come through our listserv. We have hundreds of thousands of licensees, and the best way that we can reach everybody is through our Gov delivery system. So please take that time, go to our website, sign up for the updates at the very top of it, and that way we can communicate with you with the latest and greatest of the news. And as a final reminder, we moved away from the DES email box. We have moved over to a web form and using a new email system internally. This web form allows you to submit your documents. It allows you to select what program you're contacting us about. And this has been a huge help for us. You'll see this on all of the web pages. And what this does is allow us as a division to work smarter. Instead of just receiving random emails, we're able to see what industries we're getting contacts about, what you're contacting us about, and where we can improve. We've already made several improvements off of these changes. If we see a spike in people contacting us about, you know, distance learning or emergency orders, as we saw through COVID, those allow us to make sure that if we see those spikes, we can make sure that we're getting information out through our listserv, whether we're changing information on our website, updating forms that may be confusing, or anything else to better serve our community. So it's been a huge asset for us. But if you are trying to email that DES inbox, it is no longer active. You go through our website, the link is on every form all over the website if you need to contact us at this point. With that being said, that concludes my presentation today, and I'm open for any questions you have.
Thank you, Michael. Does anyone have any questions?
Yes, Carlos, this is David Bruce. I do.
Okay, please speak.
Just a clarification question, Michael. Thank you for all your help. But so 19 new driver safety course providers have applied in the calendar year, have actually been approved in the calendar year of 2023.
That would be for both. Well, I don't know how many have applied at this point, but those are approved as the 19.
Do you happen to know like the average length of time it takes from application, assuming the application is submitted correctly, for the TDLR to issue an approved license for a course provider?
Offhand, I do not know. I would have to get with our staff, but I can get you that answer, Mr. Bruce.
Okay, thank you. It just, to your point, the spike was eye-catching, so I was curious, but thank you very much for all your help.
Yes, sir. I'll get with our staff, and hopefully I can get you that average time they're taking to process those course provider applications at the moment.
Thank you.
Michael, I have a question. You mentioned the 60-day application prior to submitting their application prior to it expiring. Is that anywhere on the forms that you all send out, at least in recommendation form? Back in the day, back in DPS days, which really dates me, we had to statutorily submit our renewal 30 days prior, and they did that to ensure that everybody's license stayed current and they could get them all out within those 30 days. Everyone submitted at the same time, which I'm sure was a nightmare for them, but they did it pretty well. You all don't have that authority, but the recommendation could be put on the applications. I'm doing my best to encourage people, but it wouldn't hurt to say that, because a lot of our industry knows that if their license expires, as long as they've submitted by their expiration date, they feel they're covered. So technically, they're instructing without a valid license during that period. Okay, and it could take a little while sometimes to receive your license. So I would encourage you all to try to put that on your forms. It might help a little bit.
Mr. Reyna, it's very good points. And actually, we are in the process of, as we go through all of our forms, updating the information in there. We do have that information in the rule as far as renewing your license. But we are making sure that when we update all of our forms that we are putting that information on there. We are also moving to potentially having an online renewal for our schools here very soon, which would also help with the processing time, the applications, everything else. But certainly as we're going through everything, I don't remember offhand if all of our DES forms have that kind of statement in the instructions or not, but definitely some, we want to make sure we're delivering this message wherever we can, whether that's on the website, our rules, and our forms, making sure that we're clear in that messaging across the platform so we can make sure everybody is renewing on time and there are no impacted users, either from the licensee standpoint or from the citizens that are being served out there. Because as you know, if we have a school that their license is lapsed, they go to DPS. DPS is checking to make sure that license is valid, and you could have customers turned away. And we want to make sure that we're doing our part to make sure that does not happen. And educating or making that awareness to all schools out there to renew, as far in advance as possible, I think is a huge step towards that.
Yeah, and follow up to what you're saying, I know of one school and one instructor that let their licenses expire. They got them in, but late, and then they were both involved with the TPS third-party skills testing. And yeah, DPS does monitor it. They were shut down, and ooh, the panic was on. But the $25,000 question: any idea when online renewals will go into effect? the sooner the better. You won't have to put your 90 days on the form if you can get that done.
So I know that we're working on those systems right now. I don't want to, put a magic number out there on our IT and our testing, but I know our groups are working adamantly on testing all of that. And hopefully we'll be able to make an announcement very, very shortly on that. I know we're aiming for dates, but as all things with IT, in our testing experience, we have to make sure it's right before it's delivered. Test all of any user acceptance testing, everything else to make sure it gets there. And I do have an update for Mr. Bruce whenever. Yes.
Oh, do you have it now?
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
Okay. Mr. Bruce, it looks like we are averaging about 2 weeks on processing a course provider application, barring any request for information in the RFIs or missing information that may be in there. It should take about 2 weeks to get that application processed.
Thank you for that information.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Michael. Anyone else have questions?
I have a question.
Okay, Nina Saint?
Nina Saint, Michael, when are the instructor renewals being sent to the instructors? If you need it 60 days, when are they getting those renewal applications?
Nina, that would be a licensing process. I don't want to speak out of my jurisdiction, so I'll let Chloe or Laura hopefully be able to speak to that exactly. I can tell you what I think it is, but I don't want to get the wrong answer.
Right, but I mean, they've got to get them before 60 days if they're supposed to be sent to you. And I know some have not been sent because I've had to follow up and system said it wasn't even sent. So Chloe or Mr.
Nani, do you have a date? Chloe Whalen, licensing, Nani, do you have a date for those instructors that didn't get their license so we can check into it?
It was last year sometime. I don't have one right offhand, but I can get that to you.
Okay, yeah, will you email it to me and I'll check into it?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, if no one else has any other questions, thank you again, Michael, and
I
let's
actually
move
have
on.
one.
Excuse me?
Liz,
Okay.
I actually had one quick question about the renewals online. Is it expected that the program is going to be similar to what we already have with like ordering certificates online, where it's all through the TDLR website? Just a simple login and submit documents and renew?
Ms. Madden, that's a very good question. Michael Strawn, Education Examination Division. So what we were looking at, and I was given that we can give out an approximate date of June 1st is what we're looking for here when it comes to our website. It will be somewhat similar. It would be more accurate to liken it to if anybody holds a different license, such as any of our some of our health profession programs that are done through a different system. There is a login. You can, apply, send money, upload forms, whatever the requirements may be through our website. It's basically a login to our system from there and managing your account. So.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Anyone else? All right, thank you again, Michael. At this point, let's go ahead and move on to the next item, which is customer service, and call on Myra Rodriguez.
Hi, good morning. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi,
Thank
good
you.
morning, board members and TDLR staff. My name is Myra Rodriguez, and I am one of 3 managers in the customer service division. We are under the direction of our director, Tuan Nguyen. As you can see here, I'll be reporting on stats. Fiscal year 2022, we peaked in June, and then it started decreasing as the end of that fiscal year. So far, if you scroll down a little bit to fiscal year 23, it's our numbers for these months so far as fiscal year 22 are pretty much similar, more give or take a little bit, but we haven't noticed any specific trends or anything that stands out. And our top two reasons for phone calls or emails are parent-taught driver education and license statuses. So that concludes my report for customer service, and I'm open for any questions that you may have.
Any questions, anyone? Okay, if there's no questions, then we go ahead and move on. Thank you, Myra. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Now we go to the Enforcement Division, and we call Cynthia Marple.
Yes, good morning. Good morning, committee members, presiding officer, and guests. My name is Cynthia Marple. I'm an enforcement prosecutor on the transportation team, which is the team that handles the driving school and education enforcement cases. So we do have some personnel updates as well. We've hired some new people and had some promotions. In May of 2022, Jessica Hurtado was promoted to the senior prosecutor position. She's worked with the department for over 4 years and has experience with many of the different enforcement programs. Jack Phillips was promoted to the investigations team lead supervisor in the North region. He has worked for the department over 7 years, mainly as an inspector, and he's also an Army veteran. In September of 2022, attorneys Rachel Session and Sarah McKinney were promoted to Attorney 3 positions and moved up from the inspections team to handle complaint cases. Rachel joined the building and mechanical team, and Sarah joined the beauty and wellness team. And we have some new hires. In December of 2022, the department hired attorney Pedro Perez as an Attorney 3. He will be on the beauty and wellness team. He most recently worked in the Office of Attorney General's Consumer Protection Division. And in January of 2023, he started on the 17th, so I don't think it made the written report. We hired attorney Dax Garvin as an Attorney 2. He is on the inspections team, and he most recently worked at the Office of the Attorney General in Temple, focusing on child support and related issues. Moving on to statistics. The key statistics are a snapshot of the cases we have and how we're doing in enforcement at the moment. And although this program represents a small set of cases, about 1% of the new cases opened overall at the department, it is very important for the protection of Texas citizens, since the primary focus of these licensees is to train new drivers or retrain drivers. Ensuring compliance really does have a direct impact on road safety. And a positive trend from 2022 to 2023 is that the average time to close a case in days went down by nearly 165 days. So that's very positive. And we also have closed more cases than were opened at this point. And looking at the pie charts for sources of cases opened for fiscal year 2023, there's a slightly different distribution than the overall agency. And also note that the fiscal year 2023 data is just from September 1st of 2022 through the end of November of 2022. So it's a fairly short time period. So we have a higher percentage of departmental-based complaints, mainly because the Education Examination Division needs regular reporting from licensees. So if they don't receive that reporting in a timely fashion, a complaint will be opened to look into it and encourage compliance. And so far, we've only had one criminal history case open to date. And going to case outcomes, this shows all the ways an enforcement case could be resolved. And just to reiterate, the department's goal is to encourage compliance. We would rather help licensees comply with the law rather than penalizing them for not complying. We balance this with making consumers whole if they were harmed. And often we can facilitate an informal resolution that both makes a consumer whole and allows the licensee an opportunity to come into compliance without a formal disciplinary action on their record. So the informally resolved cases, which as you can see is a fairly large percentage of the cases. If you go to the second page, no, we'll stay there. That's good. So it includes the cases that were closed for insufficient evidence, where the parties have or we have facilitated an informal resolution, or where we decided to issue a warning letter either for a relatively minor violation or the corrections were completed. Sometimes it's a paperwork issue or a reporting issue, and once that's completed, we may very well just issue a warning letter. The formal disciplinary process will start with issuing an NOAV, which we call the Notice of Alleged Violations. That starts the formal process for a disciplinary action. And I believe to date, we've had one agreed order completed in fiscal year 2023, and they've paid the penalty in full. And the top 10 alleged violations show the main reasons a case is opened. And as you can see, the primary reason has 19. Failed to pay a dishonored check. Those would be cases where a licensee presented a check to the department for a renewal or a new application, and it ended up being dishonored or bounced by the bank. So most of the complaints are the department based, and they can usually be resolved with, hey, provide us payment and we'll resolve the issue. And I'd just like to highlight that the low number of disciplinary actions does show the industry's willingness to follow the law and rules. Moving on to the highlights, there are 2 cases on the highlights list. One was from fiscal year 2022, and one was the agreed order I talked about earlier. And they both were focused on statutory requirements when a school closed, such as reporting the closures department in a timely fashion or issuing tuition refunds. So the most recent case was a closed school that failed to issue the tuition refund. And I believe we ensured the refund was provided and they did pay a penalty. So this concludes my presentation, and please let me know if you have any questions or comments.
Anyone have any questions for Cynthia? Thank you. Good report, Cynthia. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Let's move on to field inspections and call on Eric Beverly, please.
Good morning, Presiding Officer Reyna and members of the Advisory Committee. My name is Eric Beverly, Director of Field Inspections. It's great to be with you today. Up top, we do have a number of personnel updates. We've had a number of separations from the Field Inspections Division, including Tisha Cantu, Chris Berry, Donis D.K. Estelle, and Denise Hargrove. We wish them well in their either retirement or future endeavors and thank them so much for their service to field inspections. We, in October, promoted Lance Caroland, who was previously a North Region Senior Inspector, to North Region Manager. In November, Heather Williams was promoted from North Region Senior Inspector to Field Inspections Liaison. In December, we did some hiring for new inspectors. We hired Leanna Eastridge, Maribel Gonzalez, and Timothy Hairston. And then not included here, in January, after this report was submitted, we were able to promote 5 inspectors to senior inspectors, including Jeanette Devasti, Amy Henshaw, Julia Lee, James McEacher, and Lucretia Wells. So moving to statistics, we conducted 312 inspections in FY22. This is down from 412 in FY21. Our 3-year average for inspections is 325 inspections. Our current project is implementing Legislative and Sunset Commission direction due to House Bill 1560. We have implemented risk-based inspections for the DES program effective October 1st. There are statutory criteria that we're required to consider, namely whether or not somebody has committed a violation of a law, rule, or order, and how many times they've done that. In the DES program for fiscal year 22, we didn't have any recidivists. So the sorting was a little more straightforward. What we have prioritized is inspections of licensees that had at least one direct to enforcement violation during their last inspection. Next, we prioritize licensees that were overdue for inspection at the time that we developed the list in September. Next, we prioritize licensees that had any corrections needed violations. These are lower level violations that are not forwarded to our enforcement division. And lastly, we then look at licensees that had no corrections needed during their last inspection. That concludes my report, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
All right, does anyone have any questions for Eric? Any? All right, Eric, I do have I guess, a curiosity question. If someone is, let's say, on the bottom of the tier as far as needing to be inspected, how often can they expect an inspector to come in?
Right, so they would still be inspected annually
Okay,
for this program.
okay, good. Also, is your division in charge of inspecting new locations?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Back when COVID was running pretty hard, we were doing the virtual inspections, and really they worked really, really well. Is that available for, let's say, moving a school to inspect the premises and so forth? Because I know Nina Saint and myself both had some troubles in trying to get moved a school and stuff because the inspections were so backed up. Would a virtual inspection of a location like that be easier or quicker than having a representative come out?
It could be, and I can visit with my folks about that. Virtual inspections are an option for inspection. We do take a look at compliance history as a factor for that, but be happy to visit with my folks and circle back with you.
Okay, I would appreciate that. All right, if there is no questions from members, then let's move on to the executive office. Let's call on Mary Winston, please.
Good morning, board members, presiding officer, everyone watching. We start off our report today with personnel updates. Mr. David Gonzalez, our former deputy executive director, retired last month. Well deserved. He retired at on top, I'll say, just to spend more time with family, and which is an awesome thing, and he will be greatly missed. He was a TDLR employee for over 20 years, I think closer to 30, and we will miss him, but we wish him well. Well, since David retired as deputy, we had a little bit of shuffle go on in our executive office. We still have Mike, our executive director, our senior deputy, Christina Kaiser, and our former chief of staff, Mr. Hemant Macon. We shuffled him, he's watching, into the deputy executive director spot vacated by David. Well, this left a wonderful opening for a wonderful person who, Ms. Jessica Escobar, well qualified. We welcome her on board. Jessica was a former assistant general counsel who came over with our motor fuel quality program that we got from agriculture a session or so ago. We welcome Jessica into the executive office, and we look forward to hearing from her when she's available. She's jumped in the first and is doing a fantastic job. 88th legislative session. I didn't say update here, I said introduction because we really just started. And there's not much of an update, but we wanted you to be aware that it is going on if you didn't know. It started just a couple of weeks ago. Our legislators have been working diligently thus far. They have filed 2,250 bills or resolutions. And I was chatting with Jeff Copas, our legislative bill guru, in the background, and he let me know that last session, almost 1,000 bills or resolutions were filed. So they're on track and they're working hard. TDLR currently is tracking 158 of those bills. There is one bill that we are tracking that is related to driver education safety. It's more of an FYI. You can find it is HB 1188. You can find a link to that bill and all other bills that we're currently tracking on our website. And you don't have to scroll through different numbers and highlighted links. If you go on the first page of the website, you'll see 88th legislative session. Click on that and you will see any bill relating to one bill that we currently.
I'm sorry, Mary, you're fading out.
Oh, okay. We did you hear me that
Yeah, I heard the last I heard was something about go to a website and
okay, perfect. So on our website, first page of our website, when you click on our website, you will see 88th legislative session.
Okay.
Click on that, you will find a list of bills that we are tracking. You won't have to search through that list. You will see driver education, safety. And during that time, you will see each highlighted program that TDLR regulates. So you don't have to look very far. You'll see driver education safety, a link to the bill, which is HB 1188, and a little bit of a summary of what that bill entails. So that is that update. We are monitoring it. Jeff gives us internally daily, but it's updated at least weekly. And so we'll know that what's going on with your program. If you have other licenses with TDLR, you can see what's also going on with that program. We are just at the kickoff here, and there will be a lot of additional bills filed. We're not sure about your program. We will see. But currently, we are just watching the one that seems applicable. It doesn't really change anything for this board, but again, it's very early on. Communication outreach statistics. This is our informal summary of how you're reaching us and if our page is being effective in providing the information that you're looking for. The past 6 months, we've had almost 820,000 views, close to 4,500 per day. Most of those visitors are from the desktop computer. Actually, most are from a smartphone. So that means everyone is on the move. And secondly, from that desktop computer, almost even. Top reasons for visiting the site: parent-taught driver education, parent-taught program requirements, FAQs, driver education forms, and parent-taught FAQs. So we do see a theme here. We do provide that information. They have links that they can click on to get that information. And that wraps up my report. Is there any additional question that you have for me?
Any questions, members? Anybody?
I do.
Yes, David Bruce?
Yes. Mary, this is David Bruce. It's good to see you again.
Hey, David.
A quick question. So the service y'all provide on the website, going through being able to click on the legislative link, just a clarification, would that be a list of all the bills that may impact this industry, the driver safety, driver's education industry, or only the bills that the TDLR has some interest in? I'm trying to figure out, is it a complete list, do you think, or a partial list?
So knowing Jeff Copas, it's a complete list. For instance, the bill that we're currently tracking, it relates to creation of Texas conditional driver's permit, provisional Texas conditional driver's permit, and Texas conditional learning permit, and authorizes a fee. Now, that won't directly affect what you do in your dailies, but ultimately it will. So we try to track everything that could touch the industry, even if it doesn't touch TDLR. We just want to have everyone updated on the industry.
Okay, thank you. That's a great service. Thank you for that.
Oh, and I'm being corrected by Director Ray Pizarro concerning David's vacated position. It appears it may be posted, but currently, as we stand in executive office, we have our deputy as Hemant Macon, our chief of staff as Jessica Escobar, our senior deputy Christina Kaiser, and executive director Mike Aris-Mendez. So, any other questions?
No, but is it kind of mandatory when someone promotes that they retire?
Well,
we
have one good thing about TDLR, and we don't find that much anymore. And then that'll be telling my age of the days when people worked 30 years at a job, got the watch and the rocking chair, and people are like, "What's a rocking chair?" Well, Carlos, those days are few and far between. So the beautiful part of TDLR is that we had long-standing, loyal, wonderful employees that were eligible to retire. So we do have some folks who moved on to brighter pastures, newer horizons, but David gave us really a lifetime of work. So he was eligible and I wish him the best.
Okay, well, I'm thinking about installing a rocking chair in my driver ed car, so, because there's no retirement in my future. All right, Mary, thank you very much. Anyone have any questions? No questions? Okay, then let's move on to item F and call on Mark Gladney and staff.
Good morning, board. For the record, Mark Gladney, Assistant General Counsel assigned to the DES program. And I'm here to present the proposed rule package designed to implement the legislative and Sunset Commission direction from the last session in 2021 for HB 1560 Article 5 as it relates to driver education and traffic safety. The proposed rules are a byproduct of both the Sunset Commission. In the Sunset Report's own words, to eliminate unnecessary burdensome and unfair regulations. It's critical for all to understand today that the changes that we propose in this rule package are dedicated to the safety of all motorists on Texas roads and highways, and to more efficiently aid the industry in conducting their businesses. That's our charge and will continue to be our commitment to the industry and to the public. Now, before starting the presentation, I'd like to do a few little housekeeping items and let you all know that to ensure the public could adequately follow today's advisory board discussion during the meeting, TDLR last week provided a draft rule text on its website. The rule package, after final disposition today, will be published in the Texas Register very soon in accordance with standard rulemaking procedures. And that the published version of the proposed rules will be the one that the public will use to submit written comments over the 30-day comment period. Now, it's important to understand that this represents phase one of our rulemaking process that's intended to implement the portions of HB 1560 that are required to become effective June 1st of this year. The first phase of the rules making addresses implementation related to the new DES license types, which included numerous terminology changes throughout the rule chapter, licensing prerequisites, and qualifications, responsibilities, and functions of the licensees, and changes to program fees. Now, there will be another phase of rulemaking that will address driver education curriculum and enforcement issues. That phase will start up shortly. We don't have an exact date at this particular time, but we do anticipate that that's going to start up very soon. Now, another thing, DES is also transitioning to a different licensing database called Versa, which many of our other programs all participate in right now. So as part of that change, there's going to be some changes in processes for the driver education providers. And to ease that transition, and we understand, staff understands that change is difficult. We've heard it from just from the comments that we heard today. We understand that change is going to be difficult. So in order to ease the minds of folks out there, staff is going to conduct a series of seminars around the state. We call them summits. These summits are scheduled to start sometime in April and May to educate the licensees on the new processes associated with not just the database transition, but with the bill requirements themselves under HB 1560. Nobody, and I repeat, nobody is going to be left out or left behind. We have done these summits before for other programs, and they are quite informative and successful. Post the summit, the information and instructions related to the changes that are going to affect this industry are going to be posted and made available to the public on the DES program website. And we may have some further discussion about the summits as we proceed in this agenda item today. Okay. So, let's see here. Now, lastly, the proposed rule package that we're going to discuss today, we had a large contingent of TDLR staff working on this rule, but not just TDLR staff were working to craft this rule package. We enlisted the knowledge and experience base of the providers and instructors work group, which included 4 members of the DES advisory committee: Nina Saint, James Hiller, Elizabeth Madden, and presiding officer Carlos Reyna. They assisted staff in the rulemaking process in subchapters A through J. And their significant contributions to the proposed rules are greatly appreciated. Now, as I start going through the proposed changes in this rulemaking, I'm expecting to go subchapter by subchapter, and I'm going to note the important highlights of the changes made in each subchapter by specific section or even sections. Now, some of the subchapters, we did a lot of work to those subchapters. Some of them are amended more than others. The finished product that you see in the proposed rule package right now is intended to streamline regulatory activity and improve efficiency, education, and overall safety. The work group and the bill implementation team, or I may refer to them as the BIT team, concentrated on the directives that are due to become effective not later than June 1st of 2023. And as I've noted, this is just phase 1. Phase 2 will address the other issues, mainly devoted to curriculum changes. Now, HB 1560 allows for eliminating certain licensing types, as you heard from Ford Strawn when he was giving his presentation, and specific driver safety courses and to DAP. It eases entry for new participants who want to become licensed in the driver education and traffic safety program. It condenses the rule chapter through plain talking, which is an initiative that the department started a long time ago to try to make things a lot simpler for people to read when they open up our rule chapters. And we reorganize some sections. So by the time this rule chapter is adopted, we expect a word count reduction of almost 50% from what it currently stands at. And that is huge. Okay, so I will stop within each subchapter to ask for questions from the committee members, or if anyone wants to express comment or request clarification. Other staff members may be stepping in to contribute further information as I go on here, because I don't know everything, so I want to make sure that we get the most up-to-date and accurate information to each and every one of you and everybody who's out there watching. Okay, so I'm going to ask Derek, can you share screen? Okay, great.
Mark, before you get started, can I make a couple of comments?
Sure.
First off, I can't tell everyone, I wish I could explain to everyone how much work was done by staff and the work group to make a lot of these changes. Some of them are happening because simply things are being phased out by the statute. Some of them have a long time coming, okay? And there's some huge changes that I think are going to be very exciting for a lot of people. Some will not like it because we don't like change, but they're all positive changes if you just use them for the best of your business, right? What I would like to do is invite the other work group members when we're in certain sections. If there's something you want to compliment on or ask a question or a comment on, please do. Also, I wanted to ask Mark, as we go through these rules, I know they're written, I know we're trying to move them forward. Can there be any changes or corrections made on, I'm going to say minor things, because the major things I think have been taken care of?
Yes, we can. And I'm not entirely sure if I'm speaking for all of staff, and certainly Angie and some other folks can pipe in if they wish. But we have received written comments from a couple of individuals, and we just received them on Friday afternoon.
Right.
Speaking for myself, I'd like to have a little bit of extra time to kind of go through them a little bit. I'm not saying that I'm in opposition to any of them at this particular point. We certainly have the time to discuss the written comments that have come in, and if it's prudent to make them, we can certainly make them today and add them in. But it's important for everyone to remember that we will have a 30-day comment period after the rules are published, and I expect them to be published probably next few weeks. And there'll be a 30-day period in which parties can submit what they like about the rules, what they don't like about the rules, substitute language, and we look at every single comment that comes in. We evaluate every single comment that comes in. We appreciate every single comment, oral or written, that come in, and we do consider them quite carefully. We are required by law that to examine them, and if we accept them and we want to make a change, we give an explanation to the public in writing in the adoption preamble. If we don't accept those particular changes, we again give an explanation in writing as to why we don't. So, long story short, yes, we can make some changes. I personally
Can I hop in, Mark? Because I see you thinking, because you're the guy that's doing the heavy lifting here. Carlos, do you recall years ago we would say you get, and I'm not aging you, but we would say you get a couple bites at the apple.
Mm-hmm.
So this is actually, we've had several bites because you know how hard the work group has worked on it.
Mm-hmm.
But we are just looking for publication today to give the public 30 more days to review. And changes could possibly occur after that. So substantive changes, I'm not sure if Mark, who's really done the heavy lifting, is yet ready for the substantive changes without the 30-day review. But once we come up with something today, it's not over. We have 30 more days for the public, once it's published. So someone can chew on this for a while. Rules are published because they have timelines of publishing, so it will take a couple of weeks. And then at that point, you have 30 days of it being out there. Then we come back and we talk about all of those public comments, the changes that someone has suggested, or the criticisms, or whatever it is, all for the good. So I just want to make sure that everyone knows, and everyone watching knows, that this is not final. This hard work is not over, Mark. I'm sorry. But once the comments come back, there's more to do. So changes possibly today, but definitely within this 30, 45-day window when this actually gets published and the public has 30 days to comment. Am I correct, Mark?
Yeah, you're correct. And just remember, folks, both y'all here and everybody who's watching, as Mary was saying, these rules are not static. And I always say a good idea is where you find it. So, somebody submits a written comment, something we may have missed, and Lord knows we've had a lot of eyes on this project, a lot. And we appreciate everyone's contributions, and we appreciate anyone who comes up with a great idea to make this program, continue to be one of the jewels of this department. So.
You all are so engaged. I'm sorry, Mary Winston again. This board is so engaged. The practitioners are so engaged that we hear from you often, and we hear good things often, right? Helpful things to help us move forward in this. So this isn't over. This is just kind of step one. I mean, it took several iterations to get here and a lot of work on your part, but we have more work coming from the public. We had a couple of public comments. They'll have 30 more days to get more public comments. And we'll come back and discuss it again. before we make any recommendation to the commission.
And Mary and Mark, and those really were my reasons for asking those questions, to hear you all say it, because I wanted the public to hear it. Mark and I have had numerous discussions on things, and we butted heads back and forth. We always end up agreeing we're going to go this path because it makes sense. I know you all need the 30 days. I can imagine what's going to come in, or it might just go real smooth and not have a lot of issues. Okay, I just wanted the public to know that there is still a possibility for change for good ideas.
Yes, definitely. Yes.
Thank you, Mark.
Well, we know the industry's got great ideas out there, and we don't pretend to think that we know everything that there is to know about driver education and traffic safety. You all are out there on the ground. You know how these things work. We're not out there with you, sitting at your desk and teaching classes and stuff. So, we greatly appreciate all the help and the suggestions and the recommendations that we get, not just from the advisory committee, but from everybody else who's out there. Okay. So, that long-winded diatribe there, let's move forward. Okay, starting in subchapter A, general provisions that you see on your screen. 84.2 definitions. Now, we made a lot of changes here from what it used to be. In the previous version, 84.2 was a pretty large section. It's approximately, I believe, 28 definitions. And as a result of the mandates from HB 1560, we were able to basically cut it in half. Yeah. So we added 5 new definitions. We removed 18 definitions that were deemed unneeded due to the provisions of, as I said, 1560 repeal of certain driver safety courses like DSY 25, specialized driving safety. We also removed definitions related to the instructor training courses like IDP and IDC. In some circumstances, we did some reorganization and we moved some of the definitions, like the change of ownership provisions. We moved that to 8440. And relevant driver training entity, which we did receive a comment, a written comment about that, which we may end up making a change to. That was moved from 8443 on driver education certificates. We moved it over here into the definitions so we could kind of streamline 8443 as much as we possibly could. So a lot of the changes that you're going to see today are not just necessarily due to HB 1560, but rather HB 1560 allowed us to reorganize and condense the rule chapter to make it easier for y'all to read and understand what's going on and how the changes affect the schools and the instructors, or actually I should say the providers. I'm trying to get away from saying schools. Okay. So the purpose, throughout this rule chapter is to simplify the rule language and shorten the chapter. And we did that by deleting what we consider to be unnecessary language and combining regulations where necessary. So having said all that, are there any questions or comments from the committee on the proposed changes to subchapter A? Okay, great. I hope we continue along this track. Okay, well then we're going to move to subchapter B. And subchapter B, of course, is on the DES Advisory Committee. And there were some changes made as from HB 1560. And the main change here was to 8430, as you see on your screen right now. And what we did was the legislature reduced the committee from 11 members to 9 by reducing 1 public member and removing the DDAP member, since DDAP was repealed by the bill. The other changes in the other sections were just simply terminology updates to comport with the terminology used in the bill, and some clarifying language. Any questions or comments from the committee on these proposed changes in subchapter B? Okay, moving on to subchapter C, driver education providers and instructors. Okay. Now, starting with 8440, we started making a few changes here, and of course you see a lot of underlined language, and underlined language means that it's new language. But what you're going to find throughout this rule chapter is that what we did is we did what's known as a lot of repeal and replacing. So we would take an existing rule section and repeal the whole thing and then replace it with new language. But in a lot of the situations that you see here, a lot of the changes were mainly due to just reorganization of things, and there were some substantive changes as a result of HB 1560 requirements. But for ease of reading to both the committee and the public, we thought it best to repeal and replace entire sections so you weren't looking through underlines and strike throughs, and that could get really tedious and confusing. So 8440, the big changes here are that we eliminated the requirement, well, not the requirement, but we eliminated cash deposits and letters of credit as alternative forms of security that a provider can set up. And so, you know, you can only use surety bonds in order to satisfy that particular section. Again, we updated the rule terminology to be consistent with the terms now introduced by HB 1560. We eliminated the requirement of the department for pre-approval on contract sites, and you'll see that in 8440K. So the department doesn't have to pre-approve those contract sites anymore. The actual provider and the entity that owns the site in which you want to provide the course, you enter into a legal agreement with that party. The department's not part of that. You know, you just simply enter into that agreement. You set up your contract site and you start conducting business. And then the last change that we made was that we wanted to allow for better tracking of licensed branch driver education locations. The reason for that, and that's up there basically in 84.40A, we wanted the application for a branch driver education provider license to have the physical address of the primary of the provider, not the physical address of the primary provider. It makes it easier for us to track the locations of the branch driver education provider if we have that on the license application. So you know, we may end up doing that for inspection purposes or something of that nature, but it's easier for us to know where all the branches physically are. Okay, so those are the changes in 8440. Since we made a number of changes in 8440, I'm going to ask the committee members right now if they have any questions or comments related to 8440.
No, but I know that the industry is going to welcome not having to submit the contracts for contract sites and so forth for approval prior to teaching. Sure, it'll allow them to operate a lot sooner. Thank you for that.
Okay. Okay, let's move to 8443 then.
Before you go to 43, can I bring up 42 real quickly?
Okay.
Okay, and the only reason I am is because on 42, there was a change to the motor vehicle section. Okay, we added something I think that the industry might find helpful and might be helpful to disabled persons, because in 42A, the second sentence now has a statement says if the student is disabled, the provider may use the motor vehicle that is equipped with special vehicle controls. That was somewhat in there previously, but that car still had to comply with instructor brake, commercial insurance, all this other stuff. So really, it prohibited us or restricted us from using those cars. If we read through this now, those cars are now accepted or have an exception. Okay, the vehicles owned by a disabled student or disabled parent doesn't have to comply with the other things that apply to a driver ed car. That's really going to help us because a lot of these people, they have special cars and it's really too expensive for a school to try to install these for a one-time situation, which a lot of these are.
And that's a good point, Carlos. So it makes things a lot easier on the provider if they do have a disabled student who is
Thank you.
seeking instruction. So thank you for that. Again, that's one of the reasons why we had him on the work group here. Okay. Other than that, 8442 is pretty much the same as it had been before. Okay, 8443 on driver education certificates. The main change here was to combine the driver education provider responsibilities that were previously found in 8441. And we combined them and moved them to 8443 for better organization. So that was pretty much the main change there in 8443. Okay. 8444, and this is a biggie here. We used to hear from the industry, and of course we still hear about it. We heard about it today. That there's a concern about how many instructors there are out there. There's a shortage of instructors, and we wanted to make sure that we address that. And if I remember correctly, it was something that Sunset had a great interest in as well, because we were hearing it from the industry that instructors are aging out. We need more instructors. So we wanted to make the changes to the rule to make entry into the instructor license market, so to speak, to make it a little bit easier. So in 8444, we eliminated the GED or high school diploma requirement for instructor licensure. We removed responsibilities related to the repealed license types, such as supervising teacher and teaching assistant. Those repealed, so we didn't need to keep those in there anymore. And another important aspect that we did in 8444 is that we reduced the continuing education requirement on renewal of an instructor license from 4 hours to 2 hours. Okay. So, and you'll find that in 8443C3. And what we're going to end up doing there is upon renewal by an instructor, the instructor will be renewed, but is subject to audit of their continuing education. They'll still be able to conduct their business as an instructor, but if they're selected for audit, the instructor is required to provide the department with the successful completion of at least 2 hours of education credit, and it has to be related to driver education, driving safety, and instructional techniques. So that's a major change right there. Now, scrolling down to 8446.
Sorry, Mark, Matthew White here. I have a couple questions about 44 before we move on.
Sure.
Since we no longer have instructor development courses officially licensed, and therefore we don't have a list of pre-approved courses, how can an instructor know that their CE course will be accepted by TDLR should they be in an audit?
That's a good question. Angie, are you there?
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yes, good.
Okay. It would just need to be, we're no longer pre-approving those courses, so it would need to be in anything related to driver education, driving safety or instructional techniques. If you took a 2-hour course on how to teach as an instructor, it's going to be approved. It has to be related in some way to one of those 3 things. You could not take a course on, and Ray likes to throw this one out all the time, basket weaving. You cannot take a course on basket weaving and apply that as your CE, because it's not related at all to driver education, driving safety, or an instructional technique.
Right. I guess my concern is the availability of such courses. If instructor development courses are not licensed or mandated, then where does one go for that? Presumably, some of
They
the
can
providers
still
that have
have
been
their
doing
courses.
that. I'm sorry.
Yeah, the previous IDC providers can keep they can still teach those courses, and an instructor can still take them. We're not we're just not regulating them anymore. They can still have them.
Right. I suppose the concern is if those courses disappear, say those course providers decide to close shop, that sort of thing. So, and 2, also, going to training new instructors, that responsibility is on course providers now to create their own training programs. Will there be minimum standards as to how to implement that? And because so in 8444, there's no requirement for training in the application listed at all.
No, there is no more pre-education requirements. It will be up to the provider how they want their instructors to teach. It will be up to them to make sure that their instructors are of quality.
Right. So is there
it's all up to the provider now. That's no longer regulated.
Right. So is the instructor license going to be issued? Yes.
If I can interrupt, maybe I can help a little bit. Maybe Nina can help me out with this too. Nina and I kind of struggled with this in the work group, said this is all going away. Where are the standards? What's going to be? The standards are going to come from you. You decide how you're going to treat your train your instructors, what you want to make sure that they do. There's going to be some schools that, yes, they're not going to do very much, but then there's the quality schools that are going to put effort into it because you care about who's teaching your students, right? Now, continuing education, I've really been coming up with my own 4-hour continuing ed for a long time. Has to do with my school. It deals with the things they're talking about there. I can help you with any of those. And now it's going to be 2 hours, which is going to be even simpler. There's a lot of things I bet you could come up with that you'd like to talk to your instructors about to improve their teaching, to improve your changes in your curriculum that will count towards continuing ed. It'll actually be easier because you have more latitude on what you can do within your own school, if that helps at all.
Right. No, my real question is, are instructor licenses going to be tied to particular course providers in the way that driving safety used to be? Because without a provision for that, presumably anyone could apply to be a driver's ed instructor because there's no training required, and they could receive that license and then represent themselves as a qualified instructor taking on a job at a new course provider. I understand, taking on new hire requires training always, but it just it seems there should be some minimum standard of quality for training.
Yeah, it would then be up to the provider to ensure that the instructor they hire is properly trained by them.
And I'm going to add, again, what we're saying here is that the training that the provider is going to have to, the training program they're going to have to either create themselves, or they might contract with some existing CE provider. It's going to have to relate to driver education, driving safety, and instructional techniques. So what we're doing is we're putting a little bit more autonomy in the hands of the provider themselves as to how that instruction is going to be relayed to the prospective instructor.
Yes, this is Nina Saint. Unfortunately, all the training requirements in Chapter 1001 were repealed in House Bill 15 60. Is that the right number? Whatever the right number is.
Yeah, that's
So
correct.
there's nothing to fall back on, David. It's repealed.
Yeah, in the defense of Carlos Reyna here, in the defense of TDLR and the work group staff, this wasn't our doing. The legislature repealed it. So we're working with what we have. So in a way, it frees you up to do what you think's best to train your instructors and for your school and so forth. I look at it as a freedom, not that it's all open. Yes, some instructor may walk through your door and hand you a license and say, I'm a licensed instructor. Okay. Well, you're not getting in my car yet. We're going to go through training because I don't know what they trained him, who trained him, or what. I just expect since he's been through some kind of training, he'll catch on a little quicker. But that's my responsibility, right? For my school, my students, and so forth.
Right. I suppose, a final question is what's to stop any individual from applying for a licensure, being not affiliated with a course provider, and then to submit their own course providership license and start their own school with absolutely no background or experience in driver education, much less training of any kind?
This is not saying there's nothing to prohibit that.
You're breaking up a little bit there, Nina.
I'm sorry. There's nothing to prohibit what David's saying.
Right. So is that a concern?
The takeaway, Mary Winston, is that we create rules to carry out implemented statute and law. And as Nina said, that's been repealed. And so this is, and as Carlos said, we're working with what we got. So the concerns may be there, but the law isn't. So we are doing the best with what we have. And as Carlos, said, he's looking at it on the other side, glass half full. It's allowing you to make those decisions and not limiting those decisions through law or rules.
Right. I'm not really demanding anything right now. I just was curious if that is something that has been considered and if it will be considered and possibly made a rule around, because it does impact the overall quality of driver education in the state. I'm perfectly supportive of lowering the barriers to entry so that we can acquire new instructors in the industry, because that is a real problem. But untrained instructors opening driving schools, is a real possibility there, and that I don't believe that serves the best interest of citizenry.
Well, one thing I might note, if you scroll Derek, can you scroll up to 8441 on provider responsibilities? Okay, under subsection B, as one of the responsibilities is that the provider has to ensure that the person giving instruction has a valid driver education instructor license. So, whoever, in your scenario, if the driver education instructor, that person, him or her, is going to have to make sure that they have the instructor license before, if they're going to come on the backside and open up a school or become a provider. But right now, as we've been saying, the law is a little bit light on what you're talking about, but I think the proof ultimately is going to be in the pudding. And as we start moving down the line in implementing these rules, we're going to have to be keeping a very close eye on safety. We're going to keep a very close eye on, is there going to be an uptick in the number of accidents and, God help us, fatalities. If we do have some instructors out there that, may not be getting the proper, as much education as they probably may need. So we're going to have to watch this over the next, year or two or so to see how these new laws and the rules that we use to implement them, how are they taking? How are they being more or less effective?
I'll interject one more time, Matthew. I know what you're feeling 9 and I and the other work group members agonized over this because it is what it is. But what it comes down to is self-regulation. I'm regulating my staff, my schools, the product I produce and so forth. I can't control what the others do. Unfortunately, this does make it easier for what I'd say poor quality programs to come in, but that's not going to stop me from continuing to provide the best that I can. And that's all I can give you for now.
I agree with you,
Right.
Carlos. I understand that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And thank you for answering my
Andrew Schmidt,
questions.
Yeah, but
TDLR.
thank you for your concern. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, Matthew, we do understand. And like I said, that this was not a TDLR rulemaking action. This was the legislative action that took away the pre-education requirements. So we understand your frustration, but we are going to, and I can guarantee you, along with you advisory board members and in our work groups and in the rulemaking, our task is safety as well. And so we are always going to do everything we can to make sure the rules are tight enough, as long as they comply with the law, that we are providing the safest outcomes possible.
Well, yeah, I understand, but that's actually, to clarify, I suppose, a point that I was trying to make earlier. When there's no defined minimum standard of training or training quality, then it becomes highly discretionary, case by case, as to whether or not a course provider should be shut down, should they be acting egregiously. And all I'm saying is that, the industry as a whole will feel the void of those standards being gone, and just even having some minimum standards available somewhere, in the publication, whether it's legislature or policies or rules, wherever it is, just allows us to understand where the benchmark of quality is in terms of lines can you cross to get shut down. And I don't necessarily need a response to that. I'd just like to clarify. That's all.
Yeah.
Thank you, Matthew. Appreciate it.
And certainly understand your concern. I mean, when we sit back and we look at, I believe it's in subchapter M in the 84-500 series, and you start to see the IDPs and the IDCs and what just pages and pages of requirements that we had related to curriculum. I think that when Sunset took a look at that, they probably looked at it and said, "Hey, look, this might be just a little bit too much." Whether or not what we're doing right here is too little, I think, as I said, only time I think is gonna be able to tell. But as you can see, like from the report that we got from enforcement, this is a group of businesses and instructors that adhere to the law. They're committed to safety on our roadways. We're kind of we're taking maybe a little bit of a leap of trust here, but I don't think it's a big leap. We're going to have to kind of wait and see and take that approach and see where we end up. If it starts getting to be a problem, then it's certainly something that I'm sure that y'all will probably be contacting the legislature as well as us and say, "Hey, look, we think we may have a problem here." Yeah, and act accordingly.
I have full faith in that, Mark. Thank you.
But your point is well taken.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, moving to 8446. On attendance and makeup. The change that we made here, we made a few changes. We increased the daily maximum limit of driver education training offered by providers to 6 hours a day. I do know that we received a comment related to this particular provision, and again, it's a comment that we are going to take a very close look at as it relates to PTDE providers. We increased the allocation of behind the wheel instruction to 2 hours per day out of a 3-hour daily in-car session. And we repealed the requirement that DE providers develop a makeup policy for inclusion in their enrollment contracts. Okay. Any questions or comments on the changes that we made in this particular subchapter, besides what we already have?
Okay, Matthew, I do have one quick question here. Could y'all clarify the 3 hour or less of in-car training as the maximum? It seems to be a logistical issue to me, seeing that traditionally in-car is offered in 2 hour blocks, 1 hour per student driving and observation. And it used to be that you could do up to 4 hours of in-car training in a day, with a max of being 2 hours of actually driving and the rest being observation time. But you can only do that once in a student's driving career, that learning process. So this shows that you can do up to 3 hours per day, and it doesn't limit the number of times that you can do that. And then it also it just seems logistically clunky to have it as a 3 hour mark instead of a 4 hour maximum. Does that make sense to anyone there, what I'm asking?
Mark, Matthew, if I could respond to that, that's if you choose to use it. That's the maximum you can do. A lot of schools like mine, I can't do that. I have too many students to do that. But there are certain times, certain cases where it is allowed. It used to be allowed once, but I have found a lot of kids today, I don't know what you're dealing with, but we're dealing with a lot of students that the only training they get is 1 hour a day. And then the parents don't have time to practice with them. I would get more accomplished doing a 2 hour session than a one. Is that going to happen every time? No. All it's doing is opening it up to where we're not so restricted. I have to take you back in history, and Nina can help me with this. The reason a lot of these limits were really put into place was to work around high school scheduling for the driver education programs. That's why they were set. It used to be once upon a time you did 15 minutes per student per day. Then it turned out to be 30 per day. Then we finally got to 1 hour per day. So it's been progressing, but it really wasn't ever done because that's the best educational part, although some people can argue that. It all depends on the student. This allows you to accommodate your student base. For me, I'm not going to be able to do a lot of these. I just can't. I have too many students. But it does open it for people who can't.
Right. I'm just thinking about the scheduling logistics for trying to get a student through the program. So 3 hours or less per day with a maximum of 2 hours per day of actual driving time. Okay. So there's 14 hours total, right? So 3 hours per day would allow a student to finish the course in 4 days if they were to go that route with it. But it would also be a bit difficult trying to schedule, 2 students per instructor for a 2 hour block when you are limited to 3 hours. Should you want to add on, to that? So, in other words, instead of it being a student receives an instructional hour and an observational hour, or having the option to receive, an instructional hour and an observation hour simultaneously and then go back to back should that be available, they can only do one additional hour of either, and then they would have to come back for another 3 hour period. And the point is, when you have 2 students per vehicle, it's very easy to have a diverse lesson plan on the roadway, because you can go an hour out and then an hour away and back to the driving school, where this would make it so that students who are needing catch-up hours or are trying to stack hours in a certain day, the instructors would have to come back every hour on the hour, and that cuts their lesson plan ability in half, basically, because it cuts their ability to stray from the driving school to meet certain driving environments. That distance that they can travel is cut by half. So all I'm saying is, would it be reasonable to replace 3 hours with 4 hours and leave the max of 2 hours behind the wheel? Just to allow even more freedom.
That would be up to the TDLR staff as far as accepting of that recommendation or not. I guess take it under advisement and see what you think.
This is Angie Schmidt. Matthew, I think I want to understand what you're saying. I think I have it, but I just want to make sure. You're saying if you have two students in the car with you, they each get the 2 hours of drive time. And then they would get, if you had, okay, no.
That's if they're both scheduled for a 4-hour block. What you're talking about there, right?
They would each get 2 hours of drive time and each get the hour of observation.
Yeah,
Get the observation when the other student's driving.
Right. I mean, the reason that the 2 hours per day maximum of behind the wheel instruction is even a thing, how that came about is that when you schedule two students for a driving lesson, sometimes one of them doesn't show up. And then you have an instructor who's there for 2 hours. And if they can only drive that student for 1 hour, then they're left idle for an entire hour. And then that student is also inconvenienced for having to come back for more observation another time potentially, or being passed off into another vehicle. And so, allowing a student to drive for 2 hours per day means that if their partner doesn't show up, then we can fill that gap and we don't lose a lot of time and scheduling, admin problems with that. But if that's, the instance, if that's what the problem that 2 hours per day max solves, basically, if that's one of the problems, then it would just be helpful for it to be a 3-hour total where we can have up to 2 hours of observation in addition to 2 hours of instruction. And that way the student can potentially leave that day completely caught up, or they can be scheduled for another 2-hour block that doesn't limit the instructor's ability to implement certain lesson plans that they normally would.
So your recommendation would be in-car instruction provided by the provider must not exceed 4 hours per day as follows. 4
Correct.
hours.
So the
or
only
less of in-car
word to be
training?
changed there would be 3, and changing that to be 4. And then on number 1 as well. And
Change that to 4.
I don't have much experience with simulating instruction or multi-car ranges, so I can't speak to that being reasonable to change to 4. But number 1, I certainly can.
Can we change the 4 hours in B and B1, but leave the others 3? I mean, isn't that somewhat inconsistent or?
Yeah, Mark, if we were going to change it, I would change them all to 4. Remember, this is a choice. It's not like you have to do it. It's an option to do it. So it leaves you with that. So if we're going to do 4, then yes, we should do 4 on all of them.
Yeah, because I mean, B says not to exceed, so that'd be the maximum. You
Right.
could modify, for less than that if you wanted to, but so is this something that y'all want to propose as a change?
I'd like to.
I would support it.
Okay. So, and by the magic of whoever's controlling the screen, it has been edited to do that. So typically we'll go through a section, we'll say, is this accepted with recommended change? So that can be put to a vote, this one change, and we can do that now, later, however Mark is proceeding to present.
And this is Derek Burkhalter. I'm assisting Mark and I'm running the screen. Maybe we should just kind of ask, is anyone opposed to making this change? And if not, then we don't need to take a vote.
Sounds good. Members, is anyone opposed to this change?
This is Nina Saint. And again, Carlos gave a history. We started out at 30 minutes, went to an hour per student behind the wheel, and now we're up to 2 hours behind the wheel. And now necessarily I guess we're going to cap the behind the wheel at 2 hours per day. That's still going to remain.
Yes.
So
That
the
will remain at 2 hours per.
would be the observation or
in-car.
simulation, multi-car range, or the delineated methods. Gosh. It's called distributed learning over time, and it just seems that we keep pushing and pushing to get more done in a day. And that's not distributed learning. But we do know students learn over time. They don't learn in a clump. But again, if we're going to go to exceed 6 hours per day from 4 hours per day, it's still going to be up, I guess, to the driver education provider if they maintain what they have now or go forward, depending on their level of comfort with that. So,
because the education you're talking about, that's part of what graduated licensing came in to try to stretch it out. So that factor is still there.
yes, and that is why. And also, it's also because parents can't, if we keep trying to increase some hours, they're not going to be able to afford it. Okay. I will not oppose openly.
Are there
Okay.
any more comments from the board?
Okay. So then we are making a change to 84.46B. The line where in-car instruction provided by the provider must not exceed 4 hours per day as follows. And then B1 will say 4 hours or less in-car training, etc. B2 will say 4 hours, B3 the same, and B4 will say 4 hours. Okay.
Mark, if I may interrupt here, it is 11:50. We've been at it for almost 2 hours. And before we go into this next subchapter, if y'all would like to take a short break, we could do that at this point. It's up to you all. Do you need 5 minutes? Do you need 10 minutes?
How about 10 minutes, Carol?
All right, why don't we start back up again then at exactly 12 o'clock, all right? Okay, then
Okay.
we're at break. Time is 12:01 and we're gonna restart this committee meeting. So Mark, if you'd like to continue on, sir, we go to, I guess, subchapter D.
Thank you very much. Mark Gladney for record, Assistant General Counsel. K, as we are proceeding to subchapter D, parent-taught driver education. This is a significant chapter. We have received at least one written comment so far related to PTDE. I think it's important for people to realize that the department is very cognizant of the PTDE program and how it's grown over the years and how important it's become to parents to provide instruction to their children, much in a way that a lot of parents out there are doing home education and instruction. So this is an aspect of driver education that is very much on the department's radar. So with regard to 8450, okay. With regard to 8450, what we did was so the major changes that we've made is we removed some unnecessary language that in the existing section B, because it was basically repetitive of the statutory language in Education Code 1001-112, and that was in B3. And what we try to do at the department is we try not to mimic statutes. The important thing here is that when a licensee they get their license, or presumably before they get their license, what the idea here is for he or she to have to go to just two sources of information in order to be able to know what he or she is supposed to do to comply with the proper operation of their regulated business. And here, the law, the applicable law, and the applicable rules is where we want you to go. So consequently, there's no need to mimic statute in law. The statutes are the statutes. The rules are what interprets the statute, fills in those blanks. This is where we want you to go. Know your rules, know the law, and everything is perfectly fine. So that's one of the reasons why we removed that unnecessary language in sub B. The second thing we did was we limited parent-taught driver education instruction to students to 6 hours a day, and not including not more than 2 hours of behind the wheel supervised practice.
Mark.
Yeah.
Since we changed the 4 over into the other providers, should we change it to 4 here behind the wheel?
I think you're right about that for consistency's purposes.
Oh, no, actually, the behind the wheel is only 2. I'm wrong. Excuse me. I'm sorry. I'm wrong.
Yeah, and that was something that I was kind of wondering about before, whether or not that should have been 3.
No, Mark, this is Carlos. Yeah, it's okay to leave it at 2 because that mirrors what you can do in driver's ed.
Correct. Yes.
Because this is behind the wheel instruction, not in car.
Behind the
So
wheel.
it's 2.
In car can be observation. Behind the wheel is strictly behind the wheel.
Yeah, no, you're right. I just went back and scrolled back up to 8446, and it's still 2 hours behind the wheel. So yes, you're correct. That should stay 2 hours. Okay. Now, as I said, we did receive written comments related to PTDE, and I do believe that we also had gotten some comments that were related specifically to this particular section, and we will be examining, as I said, those comments and any other comments that we receive, both now and during the 30-day comment period, to determine whether or not some additional changes need to be made in not just in this specific area, but in throughout the rule chapter. So I don't think that there's anything that folks should be out there should be worried about. We treat this the way we do every other program, with the same, commitment and care, so that we produce the best possible rules that we can produce. So
Yeah,
I
Mark,
hope people,
I think the comments that were submitted really don't really apply so much here as I think they apply more when we get to subchapter M. And so I'll bring it up at that point.
well, I think that, at least initially, presiding officer Rena, we should uh, at least make it pretty well known that subchapter D is there for a reason. Subchapter D applies to parent taught driver education. Subchapter M is a little bit different. And we will get to that a little deeper into that explanation when we get to subchapter M. But subchapter D is parent taught driver education. Subchapter M deals with the other driver education providers.
Yeah, you've done a really good job of explaining the difference between these subchapters to me and the position of TDLR takes.
And I do know that the statute says driver education provider, and there's a definition associated with it, but we'd like to calm the waters here. And as the commenter from Aceville said, we have been in the past interpreting subchapter M to apply to the other DE providers for the most part. Of course, with the exception of the teen POI curriculum, which the parent taught driver education providers need to adhere to. Chapter M is subchapter M. Subchapter D is subchapter D. Okay. Not to mention the fact that, as it's been brought up, we do have Education Code section 1001.2043B out there that puts parent taught in a little bit of a different position than the other driver education providers. We are very cognizant of that and very respectful of, and will adhere to what the legislature has told us to adhere to. Okay. Now,
thank you, Mark.
Having said all that, we made just some minor clarification changes to 8451 and 8452. With all that being said, are there any questions or comments from the committee on the proposed changes to sub D? Okay, hearing none, we are moving to sub E.
Sorry, Mark, I hit the wrong button there. This is Matthew White. I have just a general question about the course provider licensure structure that we're going to be looking at. Is it going to be that any driver education course provider, whether they do parent taught or in person or whatever it is, will it be an individual course provider license for each service they provide, or will those be added to the one umbrella license as an endorsement, or are there no endorsements and the umbrella license is just driver education provider and there are certain approved courses versus non-approved courses?
I view it as a umbrella. It's driver education provider. There may be some driver education providers that may just simply want to provide course materials like they may have done before, but I'm viewing this as the whole kit and caboodle.
I thought, Mark, originally we had said there were going to be 3 licenses, but if there's only one, it should then have an endorsement, I think.
Well,
It does. There's
there
one.
There are
Sorry.
going to be endorsements related to the method of delivery, and Derek's been kind enough to put the chart up here, and I think we probably got to it a little bit sooner than I wanted to. But we have the overall driver education provider license, and that provider can obtain up to 3 endorsements. And as I said, the endorsements correspond with the way that the course is going to be delivered, in person, online, or if it's a parent taught. And if you look at the chart, the courses, depending on what endorsement that you choose, those are the type of courses that you can offer. There. So if you want an in-person endorsement for your DE provider license number, then there's 5 courses that you can provide. If you want in-person and online, then there's 5 additional courses that you can provide under that same license number. Yeah. Parent taught exists as I said, in the world kind of all by itself.
So, Mark, I have something to offer for consideration here on behalf of in-person providers. I happen to work side by side with quite a few very small driving schools who, are very much struggling after pandemic and rule changes and such. And one of the things that seems to there that might be helpful is if we can allow to separate the classroom and driving in person into 2 different endorsements. So what that would allow a struggling school to do is to downsize their facility costs tremendously, and which might make or break their ability to stay in business. Because if their primary moneymaker is in car, if we require that they do classroom facilities in addition to that, even though they're not using them, a huge amount of their budget goes towards that, and that's why they struggle. Does that make sense?
I think I see where you're going. Okay, so if they were just offering in-car, you wouldn't want them to necessarily have to adhere to any requirements related to like brick and mortar facility, I guess. Is that
Well, it doesn't necessarily have to be that, but just a brick and mortar that is so large to accommodate a classroom. Just downsizing to a smaller office is tremendously helpful.
Mark, that might be able to be fixed under the facilities section where we deal with facilities where classroom, where they talk about space, that would be an if applicable. So if a school isn't providing classroom, that they could possibly still be licensed, but not have to have a classroom. I can understand that if it were possible to do it there.
Right. This is Angie Schmidt, TDLR. They would still need to get a driver education provider license, and they would have the in-person endorsement because they are still providing that in person.
Correct. So, but what I would be suggesting if we were to go that route with it would be to separate the in-person endorsements into 2 in-person endorsements. So there would be an in-person endorsement for classroom, and then there would be an in-person endorsement for in-car only.
Derek, can you scroll down to 8490?
But I also recognize Carlos's point, and I do believe that's a valid solution as well.
Yeah, this is David Bruce. I think it might already be okay. It doesn't say if applicable, but it does say the facility needs to be the correct size to accommodate the number of students. And if the number of students is 0, so perhaps the language is
maybe number of students and the type of training being provided.
Right.
Correct, because we do online classroom, but in person in car. So our facilities don't have classrooms because our classroom is online.
So then that's already acceptable because there would be a lot of confusion around that because the way the rules are written, it seems you have to satisfy all requirements in order to operate in general.
Liz Madden here. I can also agree. We recently had a location where we basically have a small room where we teach online through, and we didn't have to set it up where it had to be a whole class for the allotted 36, just to show like, okay, we're teaching classroom online, but we're still doing our drive like normal in person.
Okay, y'all. Derek has 8490 on the screen. Does this address what you're talking about, Mr. White? Subsection A and subsection C?
It must, because 9 of them are doing it, and Liz, you're doing it, so it must.
Mm-hmm. We didn't have any issues when we were getting our newest place approved.
So it already might be fixed, Matthew.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, perhaps that's a concern that's a hangover from previous rule packages.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if it's already solved, it's already solved. And thank you for clarifying.
Not a problem. question, and I'm glad that, you know, I mean, we're moving around a little bit differently than I intended, but this is good because it allows people to see the interplay between the sections, you know, that we had to, as a group, both staff and the work group, had to sit down and say, okay, if we fiddle with this section, how does it affect, you know, these other two sections or this section? So it kind of gives people an idea that we were thinking about the rule chapter as a whole. You know, if we move this piece over here, is it going to move something over there? So we had we kind of had these things in mind when we were working on it. Okay.
Well, then we go
Sorry,
back.
Matthew White
I
again.
have another comment. This is Nina Saint. I would ask TDLR staff, Angie, will that still fit the criteria?
Sorry, I was trying to unmute myself.
With
Yes,
the new language, that if you're online classroom, then your facility doesn't have to have a classroom.
correct.
Okay.
So Matthew White, I just one additional question there. Under the way it's written now, let's say that a driving instructor wanted to offer in-car only services, and so offered no type of classroom service, just in-car. Do they still have to file a curriculum for a classroom phase as well as their in-car phase that they're offering?
And that would lead to the next question was, do they have to have a school? And my understanding is if they want to buy certificates, they have to be licensed as a school, which requires
Correct.
facilities of some sort. And
Correct.
now, as far as curriculum, that I'm not sure of.
Are you talking teens or adults?
Teens.
Because teen. Because we don't regulate adult in-car only.
Correct.
Just a 6-hour course, classroom course.
Right.
Right. It's just I think that one of the markets that is now becoming underserved is is in-person in-car education, because we've lost so many providers in that regard. But while market preference seems to be online classroom phase, there's still very strong market demand for in-person in-car. And with a lot of instructors wondering whether or not they should even continue to be in the business at all, offering them the ability to do just in-car services on a more mobile and cheaper way allows them to serve those underserved markets that would otherwise be unfeasible to serve because of facility costs for classroom.
But I don't know that we can do that without a law change.
Okay.
I don't think that's something that can be handled just through rule writing. Because they would have to have a provider license in order to provide certificates, which they would have to meet all those requirements in order to have a provider license. And that includes the curriculum.
Understood. Yes.
This is Nina Saint again, that I know previously in the past, we've had in-car only schools.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what was required to have that. Was it just the in-car part of the POI, or was it the full POI?
It was the full POI.
Okay.
And so presumably that's how it's continuing from today. So if if an instructor does want to start providing in-car services directly without having a full classroom facility, they do still have to write a classroom curriculum and have it approved along with that, because there's no separation between the two phases underneath the endorsements. So that's all I want to clarify is that process of how someone would go about doing that legally. So thank you. Yes.
Now they could write it, or they could actually contract with someone who has a course and use that course. But that's not anything that we're necessarily going to get ourselves involved in.
Sure.
All right, I think that moves back to subchapter E now, and Mr. David Bruce will need your expertise here.
Say that'd be 8460, Derek. Okay, in 8460, this is Mark Gladney for the record, Assistant General Counsel. We replaced 8460 and 8462 to introduce a new driving safety provider license type, and recognizing the repeal of the driving safety school license. The new rule replaces existing 8460 to combine the functions of the previously separated course provider and driving safety school license types in the one new license type, driving safety provider, to offer a driving safety course, as one of the changes that we made. The next, we moved the bond amount requirements to original and renewal applications for driving safety provider from the repealed 84.62 course provider license requirement.
Mark, may I interrupt? Did I dream it up, or was that bond requirement lowered for driving safety? Did it remain at 10?
It was 25.
Huh? Oh, that's right. It was 25. You're correct. Never mind.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. We added ownership verification, license renewal, provider relocation, provider closure, and existing provider acquisition requirements to the driving safety provider license type, while we repealed those same requirements for driving safety schools. And then, of course, we also updated the rule terminology to comport with what was being used in HB 1560. So there was a bit of movement here in this particular section of 8460. Again, we did get rid of 8462 because that dealt with course provider license requirements, and then just combine that in there. So that's basically what we did to that particular subchapter. Are there any questions or comments with regard to subchapter E?
This is David Bruce. I understand the renewal process, but for a new course provider license to be issued, and I've read the documents several times, I'm still unsure what the process would be for a new course provider license to be issued. I understand the bonds, I understand, but for an online course, would the TDLR actually still, like they used to in the past, take the course online and review all components of the course, the validation process, or is that now done with the statement of assurance?
It's done with the sorry, Angie Schmidt, TDLR. It's done with the certification statement that is now on the applications. The driving safety provider certifies that they are meeting all these requirements. We no longer review each course word by word, and there will be an audit process. If chosen for audit, the auditor will review your course at that time.
Okay, and then
what would bring on an audit?
It could be a random audit. It could be complaint based. If there's any concerns that the provider is not providing the appropriate information or incorrect information.
And then,
but we are no longer reviewing the courses up front.
This is David Bruce again, excuse me, is every course provider audited once a year, or I understand the gentleman earlier was talking about the ranking system of when an audit may be performed, but I think he said everyone's required to be audited once a year. Is that correct?
Not at this time on the audits for these courses.
Will there be a time?
I think if
Angie, if I can jump in.
Yes, I was going to say, if you're still available.
Yeah, Michael Strawn, Education Examination Division. And so to help you out on the curriculum or course reviews on the audits that are being done, as Angie said, they're no longer being done up front. And she did a great job of explaining that for the most part, they are done based on complaints, routine audits, things like that. This is a process we've been growing. Right now, as she said, it is not on a yearly basis for every provider. Obviously, with the hundreds of curriculum that are out there across all of our different industries, that is very time consuming, especially when you're looking at 30 plus hours of material for every single course provider. But it is something we are ramping up and we're looking to expand here. Really, though, we've been charged by Sunset, much as the field operations division was, to move to risk-based auditing. So those things, might be high risk. One of them could be, the nature of the industry. This industry being more high risk due to drivers being out on the road, the complaints that would come in. If a provider has had issues with keeping their curriculum up to date or having incorrect information in it, would put them at a higher risk to be audited more frequently. But at this time, they are not on a yearly, but we are working as we begin to staff up, as we begin to E&E has really gone through, education examination has really gone through a lot of changes the last couple of years. And this is one of the focuses of my section, is to enhance that auditing process moving forward.
Ford, can I ask a question for clarification purposes? The audits themselves, those are carried out by E&E personnel, not necessarily field inspection. Am I correct in that?
That is correct. We're looking at the curriculum audits. The field operations is looking at the actual business sites themselves.
The facility.
The facilities. Yes.
So your policy may be a bit different than the way that field inspections carries out their inspection policy that they've been doing since October.
It may, but at the same time, we try to do things consistently within the department.
Okay. Any other?
And it was Sunset driven for risk-based for both audits and inspections.
Correct.
Did that answer your question, David?
It did. Thank you very much.
Okay. Any other questions or comments on this particular subchapter? Okay, I don't hear any more. Then we're going to move on. Subchapter F is kind of easy. The DAP was repealed by HB 1560, so the entire subchapter, is gone. Any questions or comments on that subchapter? Okay, moving on. The subchapter G, general business practices. We may have a couple of questions here, but moving to 8480. And again, I'm highlighting what we did in various sections. That doesn't necessarily mean I'll cover every section, but I'm highlighting what we thought was important for the committee and the public to be aware of. 8480, what we did in this particular section is we removed department pre-approval requirements for business advertising by new license applicants pending licensure, and we updated the terminology. Yeah. As we did 8480. Any questions on that? I kind of want to take these ones separately. Questions or comments? Okay, moving to 8481. We did a few things in 8481. The first thing we did was to allow licensees to maintain the student records of the most recent 12 months of instruction at the provider's license location rather than the class instruction site. So it'd be a little bit easier for an inspector to do or an auditor to do a check if they're all in one location. Two, we eliminated the record keeping requirements for repealed driving safety schools and the DAP schools, and that's kind of a no-brainer since they're no longer around. We required driver education providers to upload student certificate data to the department as directed within 15 days after issuance. This particular section was a bit uh, um, um, of a question mark, I guess, while the work group was developing it. For G, we are basically asking for certificate data, much in the same way that we already require from driving safety providers, but we do it over a much shorter time period. I believe, Angie, correct me if I'm wrong, it's like 3 days.
7.
7.
7 days.
7 days, okay. So it's a lot shorter time period than what we're asking here. We're asking for this specific certificate data to be transmitted to the department within 15 calendar days after the certificate's been issued. And the information that we're asking for is very similar to what the information that DPS is asking for related to the third-party testing site providers. So we're not asking for anything more, anything different. We're just asking for this particular information to be provided for us over a 14-day period.
Right, and this, Angie Schmidt, TDLR, this has always been in law, 1001.055A2. So we are now requiring it through rule. This is all for prevention of fraud and to assist DPS with the validation of certificate data and the transmission. It goes all back to public safety. They should be able to verify that this certificate is true and correct and provided by the provider who says they did. This is information that by law, all providers should already be collecting anyway. It's going to be a process by which you're on our website, you click a link, you put in the information and you hit submit. It should not require any further programming on the part of the provider, anything special other than an internet connection. And I have a sample of what we're possibly going to be asking for. This is not exact because we are still developing and creating the program through our migration to Versa. If Derek can put that up. Yes, it will be the certificate number, the education provider license, whether it's parent taught, adult, in-person, the enrollment date. And this will also help us assist with school closures and working on providing those students with the information they need to either receive a refund or obtain their permit or license from DPS. But this is all information, certificate data. And this, like I said, this is not exact. This is what we're working on. It's still in the phase. This will not be required until June 2024. We are giving schools a year to come into compliance with this. And this includes ADE 1317 and DE 964 information.
Also,
Matthew White here. I have a question about this process regarding driving safety. Since we've lost instructor licenses and also school licensures, on the uniform certificate of completion and our data submission, are we just to delete those fields altogether or submit empty fields under those columns? What's the process going to be now?
I believe my team, and I need to check for sure, that we're creating a new, or will create the new template for the certificate.
Do you have an
Because we know
expectation?
that those,
like
these
as
should
a,
all
as
go
to
into
when?
effect for that June 1, 2023 for the driving safety.
Okay, so but do you have do you anticipate when driving safety providers might receive the new requirements in order to implement them by June 1st?
let me check and get that information for you, Matthew.
Thank you.
One thing I'd like to add is that this processes, for the driver education providers, and I don't know if this is also going to include the driving safety. Angie can probably answer that. But when we do the summits in April and May, we are going to be dedicating time in the summit to instruct people as to how to do these new processes. Yeah. So we're anticipating that there'll be a morning informational session of 2 to 3 hours to go through the changes that have been brought about by HB 1560 and our rules. And then there'll be an afternoon session go through how this information will be uploaded to the department. And right now, our ID department and E&E and other staff members are working diligently to create all the forms and the processes necessary so that our databases can accept this information and to show you the easiest way how to do it. Nobody's going to be left behind. That's why we're going around the state to educate everybody about the new changes. As Andy said, some of these changes won't take effect until 2024. For the ones that take effect June 1st of this year, that's what the summits are also going to be for. So we're not
right,
here.
and we will have
Prizes.
training materials with screenshots and things like that available on our website. So we're not just going to say, here's this upload, go for it. We will walk you through it. We're going to provide all this information to you, screenshots, directions, exactly how it's going to work.
So quick question about the summits. Would a driver education instructor be able to use the attendance of those summits or one of those summits as their CEs?
I don't think we've
Good
ever.
question.
Yeah, I don't think we've gotten around to discussing that.
I think it would be a great thing. It would definitely incentivize folks to attend. And it would also, solve any immediate confusion around what CEs they can and cannot take.
Angie, could you put that, was that your format that you all have so far? That you had on the screen a minute ago? For what we're gonna have to upload?
This is not exact. This is just a template we started working on in the beginning. This is not exactly what it's going to look like. This is just an example, a sample.
All right, because I just want to say that this section right here was a section that the work group had some issues with, and we kind of wrestled with it back and forth because we thought that a lot of information was going to be asked that a lot of providers aren't going to be able to obtain or to produce. This becomes really extensive if that's everything you want. That and be done every 15 days after a certificate's issued. It's going to make it a daily occurrence. And I'm looking at all the titles you had in there, and we kind of came to an agreement. Yes, it had to be done because the law requires it, and the management came up with a final wording on what was going to be required because we used to have a lot of things listed. But now, as I'm looking at this here, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, that's not what I thought it was going to be. You had said we were going to try to go along the lines of the third-party skill testing report, which is pretty basic and simple, but it doesn't require anywhere near all this information that you all are going to be requiring, because like simply the 30-hour supervised practice, who is responsible for that? That really has never been assigned to anybody, but it looks like it's being assigned to us. And how can I safely say this was done when I didn't do it? The parent did it, and so.
Like I said, we're still working on it. This is not the final.
Okay.
We are still working on it.
This is not a saint. Angie, is this information privy to open records?
The information that is in the upload system, we cannot send out any PII through open records, if that's the concern.
That was one of my concerns. So this information, another school couldn't try to get your information under open records request.
Like I said, if there's any student PII on there, that cannot be submitted through open records.
Yeah, this is Derek Burkhalter. So the law tells us what information can be shown or must be redacted from open records requests. And so while someone might be able to obtain some of this information, the law will protect much of it as it relates to the identity of individuals, like their social security numbers, of course. But they may be able to obtain some version of this list with that information redacted.
It's not a sen again. Why would you want the tuition amount if it's for security reasons that you're getting this data?
Like I said, this is not the final. We don't, this is not the end all of what we're going to, it's just a sample, and we are still working on that.
Okay.
And then Elizabeth, madam, I had two questions. So for the teenager perspective, since it's for the two parts of the form, when the teenager's at the very end and we're submitting the information for the final part of their certificate, we essentially have to duplicate what we've already submitted just with the additional information, or is it just adding in what is needed?
You shouldn't have to duplicate what you've already sent in. That information will already be captured.
All right, and then my second question, so I see on here that it says the 6-hour certificate, but in the actual rule, it doesn't mention about the 6 hours. In a prior draft, we did have it mentioned. Do we need to have that explicitly added into the rule?
Liz, I think it does kind of mention it when it says for learner license only, which is usually the 6 hour. But of course, it could always be the whole 32, so.
But it doesn't mention like for the course exclusively for adults, because whenever I read for learner license only, I just think teenagers.
Yeah, because that's it, because I don't believe the adult certificate information is being required yet.
It is. It's driving. Yes, it is a certificate. It's for ADE and DE 964. It's driving training provider certificate information.
The statute does not differentiate. It just says driver education certificate. So that includes
And adult is driver education, correct?
Okay, so it's just understood. Gotcha. Awesome. I wasn't sure whenever I was reading that.
I think with that question, that kind of pulled us back to the rule. Angie gave us a little taste of something, but we'll think about that later. It's a work in progress.
Right. It's just a sample. It's, like she said, it's a work in progress. We are not there yet.
And you have plenty of time to comment on that, but we will keep moving.
Yeah, but my question is, will the final format that we're going to use be ready by the time we get to the second time we vote these forward? In case, because it's a lot of information that's being asked. It kind of caught me off guard, how much information was showing right there. Because some of those things I don't believe belong in the certificate security provisions of the law. I don't see.
Angie, are we doing this on a timeline with the rule, or is this going to come after that? Because the rule.
Mary, let me jump.
After that, they have until June 2024 to come into compliance.
Very good. So I just wanted you to say that. So we have time.
Let me jump in real quick. Yes. Direct education examination. Again, these rules is to provide the requirements and to have the authority to do what we're wanting to do and what needs to be done to be in compliance with the law. This is not saying this is going to create their certificate. This is allowing for us to create what we need to create to gather that information, which is what Angie is saying, is some of the same similar information that is already required by schools and by providers. We have not been collecting this, and we should have been doing this for a long time. These are things that were pointed out to make sure that we're consistent on how we operate the driver training education courses, providers, everything we do for this industry. So I don't want to sidetrack of trying to resolve the issue now of what exactly we're going to require and ask of you guys on a certificate. This is actually to lay the foundation that we need to be consistent with what the law is asking us to do.
Correct. And we need, DPS also needs to be able to verify that the course the student actually completed is what is on that certificate and that certificate information when they're coming into DPS to get their license. And it's all about safety to ensure that this is what they actually did, this is who they actually attended school with, and for better drivers on Texas roads.
Okay, any other questions or comments related to this subchapter? Okay, if not, moving on. Again, for the record, Mark Landy, Assistant General Counsel. Okay, we're moving to subchapter H then. Facilities and equipment for driver training providers.
Hey, Mark?
Yeah.
Excuse me, this is David Bruce. Apologize for just interrupting. Can we go back to 84.82?
Sure.
If you don't mind, sir. Just, this will be quick, but this data is for all the information that needs to be on the contract for any type of our businesses that we may run. The only thing I would like to point out is on 14, so B14, I think we should just put, just so it's not confusing to the student, these contracts are already fairly confusing, I think, to a lot of people. On 14, put if applicable, as we have done so on the 13 and 15. If you have a classroom, or earlier we're talking about some people only do in-car training, et cetera. Just instead of having something in the contract that is really not needed, it just causes confusion sometimes with the student, and then they call to make sure everything's okay.
I don't have a problem with that. How does the rest of the committee think about it?
I'm okay with it.
Anyone opposed to it on the committee? Okay, hearing no opposition, we add the term if applicable to 8482B 14.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you. Okay. Okay, moving forward to subchapter H, and the 84.90, I believe. Now, we've already had a slight conversation about this already, but the major changes in 8490 were mainly just to remove the references to courses that have been already repealed by HB 1560. So that was the major changes here. And so, as you can see, it condensed it from the previous size of the section down to something much smaller. So, are there any questions, additional questions related to 84.90? Okay, hearing none, then we will move to subchapter I, inspection. Now, we had already heard from Eric Beverly, as a director of field inspections, related to the changes that have been made as a result of HB 1560 and moving from a periodic inspection regime to a risk-based one. Yeah. So as a consequence, we had to make some changes related to that. So for the changes that we made we amended 84.100, 84.101, and 103 to reflect the inspection rule changes that are now housed in Chapter 60 of the Department's administrative rules. The Commission just recently adopted those changes to Chapter 60. So the what you see now on 84.100 is that the inspection requirements are basically referring to the new inspection rules that are in Chapter 60, Subchapter H. So DE providers will be inspected, as you heard from Beverly, in conjunction with the rules and the law associated with at-risk inspections. Okay. 84.102 was repealed. That was on periodic inspections, repealed for the obvious reasons that HB 1560 repealed that. All right. Any questions related to subchapter I? All right. Hearing none, we're going to move to J. Driver training provider cancellation and refund. The only major change that we made in this particular section is that we reduced the interest rate on unpaid refunds from 20% to 10%. That was a work group recommendation. Are there any questions or comments related to subchapter J? Okay, hearing none. We are going to move to subchapter K, fees. This has a tendency to be a kind of an interesting subchapter, but let's sort of see where we go on it. Starting with 84.300, we've had some changes here. And the changes here are as follows. 84.300, we kept the initial and renewal fees for driving safety provider at $500 and $300 for renewals. With one major change, PTDE providers would now be charged that same fee for initial and renewal licenses. Okay. Now, to recognize the provisions in Education Code 1001.201B for those providers that offer more than one TE course or course materials under a driver education provider license, the recommendation was to create endorsements under a unitary driver education provider license number. And we've kind of had some discussions about that already. Derek, if you could put the chart back up again. Okay, so you see the chart. We have the driver education provider license, and under that, you can get up to 3 endorsements. Okay, and the endorsements, the initial and the only fee associated with those 3 endorsements is $300. Okay, so with the initial application, you would get 1 endorsement included in that, and you can pick up to 2 additional endorsements. Was there a question? Oh, okay. I thought there was a question.
This is Nina Saint. Yes. So are you saying that they're going to have an initial in-person license, an online license, and then the endorsement fee?
Okay, the fee is for the provider license itself, and then you would just choose the endorsement that you wanted, and then that would be a one-time fee of $300.
But if I just wanted it in person and an online, those renewals are $100 each. That's $200.
Well, that would be for the renewal for the DEP license.
Okay, so you're saying initial application. So existing schools, are we already paid our initial application, or are we going to pay again?
Angie, are we going to be doing that, or are they just going to be paying the existing schools just be paying
It would be upon the renewal, you would pay the renewal.
Okay.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay. So the renewals will be $100 for that.
Right, but it doubled my renewal.
You renew as a driver education provider. Your endorsements will renew under that renewal. You will
But-
not have to renew the endorsements
Yeah, there's no
unless you add a
fee
new one.
for the endorsement. Yeah, once you have the endorsement, it's there to stay.
Correct.
And it runs with the provider license, so you renew the,
But if I have to renew an online provider and an in-person, is that not two?
No, that's your endorsements. You renew your driver education provider license. If you already had the in-person and online, those renew under your one driver education provider license, so you pay that one renewal.
the only thing you're paying for is that DEP license. Once you pay for the renewal, that's it. I mean, once you pay for the endorsements, that's it.
Okay.
Correct.
We'll figure it out when in 2024.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. So that's how that is going to work. You know, with this chart here. You know, so the DEP can choose how they want to do it. And once you pay for your endorsement, that's it. You only pay for it one time. Okay. Then you're free to deliver based on your endorsements chosen. You're free to basically have the courses delivered, whether it's in person or online or whatever. These are you see below. You could deliver here. Well, it looks like you had all three. It looks like 13 courses under one DEP license number. So you have a myriad of ways in which you can provide course material to your prospective students.
But if you do have 2 online courses, you can only have one endorsement of each type per provider license. So let's use parent taught, for example. If you have 4 different parent taught courses, that's 4 different driver education provider licenses.
Okay.
All right, any questions so far? Because we're doing things a little differently here now. Okay. Then we're going to move on. The endorsements do not apply to instructors, so we're going to move on down a little bit here to subsection C of 84.300, and where you see instructor fees. Okay. The fees haven't changed. It's still 50 for an initial and 25 for a renewal. Okay. Now moving down to the driver education.
One second, Mark, under instructors, I see the original fee, then there's the $25 fee for renewal, and then there's an actual criminal history fee. That's usually included with the $50, or will that be done when you renew also?
That's included.
Okay. Moving on down to subsection D. Now, subsection D used to be a little bit more, a little fuller than it used to be, but it's shorter now because we made a pretty big change here. Pre-approval course fees have been eliminated. I think we mentioned that a little bit earlier. So no more $9,750 for AMI course approval, and no more $5,850 for online adult driver education course approval. So that's a pretty huge change. Before we move on, any questions or comments? Okay. All right, then moving down to 84.301, driving safety fees. Okay, so the driving safety provider fees, basically, as you know, we got rid of the course provider license. So all that is just kind of combined with that and the driving safety school. So you're now a driving safety provider. The fees are basically had not been changed from those that were the ones that were charged to the course providers. So initial fee, $500, renewal fee, $100. Okay. The other fees are the same as they were before. Okay. Now, moving down to the subsection C, what we have here again is no pre-approval course fees in driving safety anymore. So the $5,850 fee for driving safety or specialized driving safety course pre-course approval, those fees have been eliminated, just as they were eliminated for driver education. Okay. And again, as Angie said, you know, we'll be following up on the back end with audits and inspections. So we will be doing that. Any questions or comments here?
Elizabeth Madden, just to clarify, so basically the pre-course fee, let's say for just an online course, so that's completely gone, or it's just not required at the beginning anymore?
They're gone.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. And I you know, we didn't just do these you know, without doing a lot of thinking and a lot of calculations. We had our finance department, our financial experts look at you know, whether or not we could operate the program efficiently, given the same quality that we've always given before without these fees. And after we sat down and the financial people went through this, they had determined that yes, we can. Now, over time, remember, we've had this program since 2015. And over that 8-year period, we have basically been slowly but surely integrating this program into the way that TDLR does things. And, you know, we've got almost 40 different programs. And over that time, we've developed processes and ways of doing things in order to bring down costs. Now, it takes us a little bit of time. It took us a little bit of time to figure it out with this program, but we're able to take some of the processes that we use in other programs and apply them here. And that allows us to basically bring it into the TDLR way of doing things. And by doing that, we're able to save costs. Now, by law, we are required under 51.202 to make sure that we charge only those fees that are necessary to conduct, to regulate the program. And we determined that by getting rid of these pre-course approvals and having the statements of assurance and you know, the audit processes, we can still run this program and regulate it properly without having those course approval fees in there. Remember, we inherited those course approval fees from TDA.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
So yeah, any other questions related to the subchapter or comments?
Yeah, Mark, this is David Bruce. Look, I guess I appreciate the fee reduction, but I am concerned about the quality of courses across every part of the driver training division. When we're going to rely, the state will rely on a statement of assurance without actually reviewing the courses. Because I think people put a lot of faith in the TDLR saying this has been approved. And really without any approval or any review whatsoever, we're going to roll out, not we, but a lot of courses will be rolled out. And so I'm just going on the record. I have concern about some of the quality of courses, and I have concern about some of what's being taught and maybe not being taught. And it will take some time before the TDLR can go find the bad actors. And in the meantime, we've got young kids and adults trying to be, you know, become better drivers. And I don't know if we're going to hit that goal for all of them. And I'm just gonna, I know this has already been passed, or not passed, but this is the direction we're going, so that is my concern.
And you know, we share the concern. Remember, this is all about safety. You know, this is all about safety for everybody who's on these roads and making sure that proper education is imparted to these teens and in some cases adults. And you know, making this change was not something that you know, we just came to overnight. This was a evaluation that took quite a bit of time. Uh, you know, both from a financial standpoint and just from, you know, thinking about safety every single day. So, you know, your points are well taken, and we share that view.
Thank you, sir.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, then we are going to move forward here to subchapter L. Subchapter L, we made no real significant changes here. We just deleted a portion of the section after we sat down and determined that we may not have enough legal justification to enforce executive orders from the government. So, in the event that a licensee violates an executive order, so we removed that for now. It may be something that we may revisit again, but we just weren't entirely certain that we had the legal backing to continue to include that. So that's why we removed it.
Mark, I may have misspoken earlier, and I want to make sure I get it understood. When we were talking about the cost for fingerprinting,
Mm-hmm.
it is in addition to the $50 fee, but they only have to pay that for the initial, for the instructor license.
Okay.
They won't have to pay the $25 for renewal.
Okay.
Fingerprint fee. So someone asked about that. I think it was Carlos, and I just want to make sure.
Hey, this is Laura in licensing, just to be sure. So when in that criminal history fee, when an instructor is going to apply for the first time, they do need to get fingerprinted, and that fingerprint fee is paid to DPS through their contractor through their set fee, and so they will be charged that fee. And you know, the applicant will have to pay that fee, and then also the application fee. But we don't, you know, that's part of the fingerprint process. But then when they renew, like Angie said, they won't need to do that again. That's only an initial. So just to clarify what that criminal history fee is, that would be something the applicant pays directly to DPS.
Laura,
Thanks, Laura.
in the event that an instructor got into a little bit of criminal trouble after renewal, upon the next renewal, they are they still going to be fingerprinted, or is there going to be some way in which we will know if they picked something up?
Right. So if for right now, for a new applicant, when they go in, they get fingerprinted, then what happens is we subscribe them because it's a national fingerprint database. We subscribe to them and we receive what's called wrap backs in the event that they are arrested or a new charge is done, and so that we automatically get notified through FBI or DPS, and so that just keeps going as long as we keep subscribing. Anybody who maybe has not been fingerprinted in a really long time, we may have to go back and get fingerprinted, but that's a totally different issue. But that's just for new applicants going forward, and that's how we're notified.
Okay. So in the event that an existing instructor picks up a serious criminal offense, we may be able to simply say, okay, look, you know, you're not going to get a license here. Now, of course, you know, there'll still be due process involved, but we have that capability.
Yes, yes. And as long as we were subscribed to their fingerprints, yes, we would have that ability. And once we get notification, then it would, of course, like you said, go through the process. But right.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Then moving on, if we don't have any other questions on subchapter L, then we're going to move to subchapter M. Okay. Now, subchapter M has been brought up a little bit earlier, again, when we've been talking about in the context of PTDE providers. You know, and again, subchapter D is for PTDE providers. You know, that's in the title of the subchapter, and that's what it's intended for. And subchapter M, with the exception of the POI, certainly the team POI, subchapter M is going to apply for the other types of driver education providers. At least that's what the department view has been, and that's certainly been acknowledged earlier in this meeting. So basically, I'm only going to go through a few of the changes that have been made in subchapter M because that's the subject of phase 2. And in phase 2, we're going to be dealing with the ability that HB 1560 has given us to re-examine curriculum, and we will be doing that with the appropriate work group. Members from this committee are going to sit on that work group, just like the members of the provider instructors work group assisted and gave us great guidance in the current rule package that we're talking about. And curriculum is going to be extremely important because, again, the overriding theme of everything that we're doing is safety on the roads. And it's going to be no different when we're talking about any possible changes to subchapter M. So outside of the rule sections that were repealed by HB 1560, the changes that were made here in 84.500, we basically updated the rule terminology that's consistent with HB 1560. We removed the requirements related to driver education and instructor development, and we've had some discussion already on the IDP and the IDC, and of course we clarified some of the rule language to try to plain talk it a little bit more. But rest assured, subchapter M is going to be the subject of quite a bit of discussion and meeting and deliberation in a subsequent rulemaking in phase 2. And we're going to be going through the same processes that we're going through right now, you know, with public comment and public participation and participation from the committee members as well. So I don't have too much to say about 84,500 other than, you know, what I just said. We did carve out a lot in subchapter M. I believe we repealed about 4 sections in there. So there's not too much more to say about sub M. As I said, we repealed the sections related to DSY 25, specialized driving safety, and DDAP, as well as the ADM provisions that apply to DDAP. So that's approximately 4 rule sections that were repealed as a result of HB 1560, which has greatly reduced the size of the rule chapter overall. Again, this is part of the HB 1560 and the Sunset Commission's move to eliminate what they call to be unnecessary, burdensome, and unfair regulation. Doesn't mean that we're not keeping an eye on what's going on here. We certainly will be. But the legislature in HB 1560 has presented us with directives, and you know we're bound to follow those things, and that's why subchapter M looks quite a bit lighter than it did. So I don't really want to get too deep into subchapter M again because it's a subject of phase 2, but certainly any questions or comments or suggestions that anyone has at this particular time on subchapter M, let's hash it out.
Elizabeth Madden, What's the timeline for phase 2? Is it supposed to go live June 1 or after?
Not phase 2. Phase 1 is was developed to address those directives in HB 1560 that we had to have adopted, not later than June 1st. So what we're doing today, these are the directives from the legislature to say these things must be in place and ready to go June 1st of this year. Phase 2, we have some time, but we have been in talks internally about starting phase 2 not too long after we publish phase 1.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
So any other questions or comments related to the subchapter? Or any other subchapter at this particular point, because we're almost finished. I'm going to move down to subchapter N here real quick, dealing with the exempt entities. And just to tell you that there were no significant changes here in sub N, which are related to colleges and universities and public schools. So we clarified some language a little bit, but as far as making any substantive changes, we did not make any of that. Any questions or comments on subchapter N? Okay, hearing none. That pretty much concludes my presentation, unless there's any other questions or comments.
Mark, I have some
Okay, Mark.
comments. Mark. This is Ray Pizarro, Director for Education Examination Division. First, I want to say congrats, Mark. Angie, your team has done a phenomenal job of getting this together and working with the board members. David, Bruce, Matthew, Elizabeth, you guys have been engaged and really have some great questions and some great comments behind all of this. I'll tell you, with the branch location changes and this uploading of certificate, all these little things, it seems little and it may seem burdensome, but guys, there are over, and this is for the people listening, there's over 300,000 students or individuals that go through this driver education. And we have, in 2022, we've had over 4,000 fatalities. Guys, that's almost 10 people a day. Those are somebody's children who have died on our Texas roads. I've known people who have died on the Texas road, and I've known folks who have died on a motorcycle accident, and we regulate motorcycle. So it's personal. We need to do our charge. You've heard Mark and staff talk about this is public safety. It is. This is why we're here. This is why we are charged to make sure that we put out the best thing possible. David, it's not perfect right now, and I agree with you. There's a lot of things we need to do, but we need to continue to work hard to reduce those numbers, help TxDOT put that word out, get the message out. There's accidents occurring, and we need to make sure these students are doing what they need to do. Sunset has charged us to work closely with DPS to ensure that that learning examination, that knowledge test that they're taking does emphasize and actually hit on the things you guys are teaching. While you're teaching these courses, it needs to have some similarity and some continuity to make sure that what they're teaching and what they're testing, so that when they get on the road, we can have better safety. We can have better safe drivers out there. I heard Angie said it countless of times in Mark. It's public safety, and it really is. I want that to resonate with all of us. I keep telling our staff, this has been a long road, but I keep reminding them, guys, we are here to help people. We're here to save lives. And I think at the end of the day, I think we all will agree with that. Yes, there are certain things that are maybe burdensome. We're going to try to not make it so, but we need to do our part to try to get to the right place where we need to be. Guys, I think this is a great rule package. I'm hoping we could tie a few things up and look forward to phase 2. And again, you heard Mary said earlier, this is not the end of it. You know, whatever happens today, tomorrow, whatever's adopted, doesn't mean we can't make additional changes in the future. I'm hoping, and I'm hearing Matthew and David is always, I know David Bruce for a while, always engaged and try to make things better. His comments are always about, hey, I want to improve this process. And I can see that in Matthew. Why not these things? Why not 4 hours? Why is it 3? We need to keep engaged and ask those questions, try to improve the process. I'm really happy where we're going with this. And I think we're gonna make it. Since 2015, here we are in 2023, we've come a long road. And we've come a long, long way. And Nida, I think you would agree with that. We've come a long way of all of the changes we've made. And the chairman, Carlos, we've done a lot. We've done a lot to improve this, improve the driver education in Texas. I want us to be number 1 in the state. And I think we can get there. We just need to keep working harder. The carrot is out there and it's going to be a long road, but I think we can get there. We can keep closing that gap and closing the gap to make sure we have less and less fatalities on the road. Anyway, I just wanted to commend you guys, the board members, the work group, and all staff. We did a really, really good job.
Thank you for your comments, Ray. I appreciate that. I'm sure we all do. Like you, driving safety, that's why we've been in this for so long. But I share the concerns of others with regards to what 1560 has done to possibly weaken the ability to provide good courses, okay? But we have to trust that we'll have to do a wait and see on this, okay? So I'm excited about a lot of these changes, but at the same time, we can have some concerns about some of the things that may be transpiring. So any comments by anybody else? If there's no comments, then I'm going to go ahead and move forward with.
Excuse me, Carlos. Yeah, I just want to, ask for a formal motion to approve for publication the rule package as presented, with the exception of changes made to 84.46 and 84.82.
That's what I was about to put forth to the committee, okay? Do I have a motion to move this forward? Anyone?
This is David Bruce. I'll motion to move it forward.
Do I have a second?
Nina Saint, I'll second.
Okay, then Delia, if you'll do a roll call vote on the motion, please.
Yes, sir. Mary Lloyd,
I approve.
Elizabeth Madden,
I approve.
James Hiller,
I approve.
Matthew White,
Approve.
Dr. Nina Saint,
Approve.
David Bruce,
Approve.
Carlos Reina, presiding officer.
Approve.
Motion passes.
Thank you, Delia. All right, now recommendations for agenda items for the next committee meeting. Does anybody have any recommendations? Delia will keep the list.
With the caveat that we will be presenting public comment, and you will see these rules again.
Okay, thank you. Now, as far as date and time, location, the next committee meeting, Nina and I travel. Maybe next time we'll be face to face, right? But Delia, will we do this by contacting people after the fact, or are we able to set anything right now?
No, I will poll the board for a future meeting.
Okay. All right. Well, then if that's that, then we're going to adjourn. And the time right now is 1:25. We are adjourned.